see Helen coming in?
Should there be people held accountable for what happened in 2016? Absolutely. But much more important to me is how do we make sure that we don't end up in the same situation?
Hey, Helen.
I mean, these
How
are
are you?
people's lives.
Good, good.
These are people's homes.
That's it. Had your name on it.
And you can introduce me. We've had three major flooding events since then.
Okay.
You know, we cannot go on.
Silence that phone.
And
It's time to start.
I really always try hard not to attribute to malfeasance what I can attribute to.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Helen Matheny, and I'm a member of the PEIA Task Force, and I want to welcome all of you for coming out tonight. This is a wonderful turnout. We appreciate you being here. First, I'd like to introduce the Governor's Chief of Staff, Mike Hall, for some remarks.
Thank you very much, Helen. I'd just like to, first of all, this is the last scheduled public hearing. Thank all the participants who've gone all over the state to listen to what people have to say about the PEIA plan and how it works. So I just wanted to publicly, from the governor's office, thank those citizen volunteers who've gone here and there and legislators and so forth to listen to what you all have to say. I can say that we've gathered a wealth of information and just wanted to make a couple brief comments about where we go from here before we get into the hearing. But first of all, we have been able to quantify what we have been hearing from those of you who've been coming to these meetings, just to see what, obviously, it was a hard concept to really define, but to say what is a fix for PEIA, what's broken, or what are people really troubled about when it comes to the PEIA plan. And there have been about 5 or 6 or 7 things that we, and I'll identify those in just a minute, that we have consistently heard in all the meetings. Just so you'll know the process, we actually have 3 subcommittees. This one was logically the first one to do its work, and that was to hear from the public. So we've videotaped all of these. We've done online surveying. We've garnered all kinds of information. We've begun to watch through the videos. I've watched a few of them and quantified what's being said. The next thing that happens is we have a subcommittee that's looking at the plan and design, and we've actually had some initial conversations about what we've been hearing, that as you would take a look at the PEIA plan as it currently exists, how could you change, or what should you change in order to address the kinds of objections or complaints or comments that have been made. Then once we formulate that, then the next group actually is our group that looks at the cost. Some of you have talked about that in your comments about the funding of PEIA. I just want to say that briefly that the overall cost of PEIA, so you'll know, what for 2019 is $921 million. And that reflects the fact that $647 million of claims and cost is paid by the active participants. And by active, we mean those state employees or county board of education employees, meaning teachers, service personnel. And then also we have state agencies who are not state employees that participate in the PEIA plan. For example, municipalities do. Different types of organizations are in it. And then you obviously have the retiree community. It's $274 million of the 921. So that if you're going to cover the obligations of PEIA, then consistently and let's take last year as an example, consistently you would have to come up with that kind of money, about, to be exact, in 19 to 921 million. Essentially, what happened during the legislative session last year, and what people commonly say, funding PEIA, or fully fund PEIA, and that's a remark we've heard a lot. So I'd like to address that briefly, and then more will be said later. The legislature, through the general revenue budget and several special revenue accounts, meaning those agencies who collect their own money, basically fund PEIA at this $921 million level. When you look inside of where does that money come from, about 40% of it is personal income tax paid by the taxpayers. About 30% of it is sales tax paid by the taxpayers. And about 20% of it is the severance tax that's paid by natural gas companies. And then we have several other taxes, like tobacco taxes, probably about 10% of it. We have several other taxes that we collect, but the bulk of the PEIA plan is paid for by those four taxes: income taxes, sales taxes, tobacco taxes, and severance taxes. And the plan is therefore paid for by the general revenue of the state, not just dedicated one source. We have no one source that we could dedicate $921 million to. Now, the issue that has come up in many meetings is, well, fully funded, meaning, let's look at last year. In order to keep the plan the same as it was the previous year, the plan year of 18, that it'll be starting July the 1st in 19, it cost an extra, I think, $50 million. So the concept was, because of medical inflation and other reasons, in order to keep the plan the same, it's $50 million. Now, Director Cheatham says for next year, to keep the plan the same, because this has been a good claims year, and things happen in the medical world that cause things to sometimes go up or go down, or maybe one year you have a lot of flu, or you have an epidemic, or you have something. But next year, it appears the plan could actually remain the same. No changes in the benefit structures or anything for anybody, for about the same money that we're paying this year. But the question about funding PEIA is, first of all, and I'm not saying it will, but if it stayed the same, then the challenge next year is not as great to, quote, fund PEIA fully if it remained the same. Now, because we have heard from you all about things you'd like to see changed, if those things are changed in any significant way, then the cost of the plan could go up and you would need more funding. Now let me talk about the 2 or 3 things that we've heard and probably will hear tonight. One is, a lot of you don't like the co-pays and the cost that you're having to pay. I mean, that's pretty obvious that people would complain about that. We've obviously heard that in the past, my wife was also a principal and a teacher over the years, that when many of you were hired, that the cost of your health insurance may have been nothing, or it was, over time there was an addition of the 2080 and so forth and so on. So we've heard about that. Obviously, if the state were to absorb the cost, the $921 million would be the same, but how it would be paid for would be without any participants paying. I mean, that would cause an additional cost to the general revenue budget, and you can kind of do the math. I'll just go on from that, and I'll talk about the other 3 things that are pretty prevalent that we've heard, and then others may say later. But one of the things we've definitely heard about is we just do not happen to be in a border county tonight, but some of you may be from there. But if you live in a border county or near an area where you've got to access the healthcare system outside the state, particularly in the Eastern Panhandle and Northern Panhandle parts of the state, there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that the co-pays and maybe the deductibles are greater because of the fact that you have to access a hospital outside the state. Now, here is the challenge to that. The PIA, it's 230,000 of us West Virginians that are in this. So that gives the PIA Finance Board and the director the opportunity to negotiate what's called the reimbursement rates for the providers in this state. Now, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but many of you probably are, that Medicaid has a certain amount that it pays. I mean, the hospitals have to take a Medicaid reimbursement rate. They take a Medicare reimbursement rate, which is a little higher than Medicaid. But PIA is actually under the Medicaid costs are about the same. Some of the out-of-state hospitals just won't do that. They will not take what we will pay them. So that creates the challenge. But we've heard that many times. And so there are ways to mitigate that problem, but none of them are without cost. Exactly what the cost would be, it's hard to say, but it will be looked at. The second thing we've heard a lot from, and this is true in probably any health insurance plan you may be in, it's called the drug formulary problem, I call it. I'm sure some of you are going to come tonight and tell us a story similar to this. I was on a certain drug. My doctor told me I needed to take something else because the formulary drug that the CVS currently, who is the benefit provider, the formulary drug does not help me. Not everybody's body is the same. Not everybody can take Lipitor, for example. Not everybody can take certain types of drugs for insulin. We've heard one of those. So then you have to step outside the formulary to try to access another drug, and then you find out from PIA that's not covered. Then you get into a battle with your doctor or the PIA plan because you're not getting the drug, for example. Maybe you're getting sicker, maybe there's problems. I know that my mother-in-law, who passed away a few years ago, had COPD. We had this problem. There was a certain drug that would not work, and it was on the formulary, and the other one wasn't, and they tried another one, and she'd get sick, and then finally they'd go through the process of getting the other one approved, and we just recognize, I hope you all will recognize something. This concept of the formulary of certain drugs that are on there is true in any health insurance plan you're dealing with usually. There may be some that will just cover anything. And the reason is the most accelerating cost in health insurance today is drug costs. So, but we recognize that many of you have had that problem. So, we will revisit how that formulary works. And then the third one that I've heard from many people is what I call the prior authorization problem. And that is, you go to your doctor and you need a test, and the doctor says, well, I've got to get it pre-approved. And I'm sure some of you have gone through that. And then you call up. And I know personally, I had, my wife noticed I was tired a lot. Still am. But tired tonight. But she became worried when I had a little incident with my heart one evening. She said, you need to go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor, and he gives me an EKG, and he checks, and he says everything's normal. But I had to go ahead and go through this because I have to kind of prove to the PIA and the people that, I want to get a stress test for you. But it has to be prior authorized. Well, I'm sitting there thinking, hey, I'm okay. It doesn't matter to me whenever you get it done, all right? So a month later, he calls me and says, hey, I got it approved. So I went through prior authorization. I went to get that stress test, and it was so, I'll never forget what the nurse said to me as I was doing it. She said, how you feeling? And I can see an EKG, and I could see it wasn't right. But now, what scares me a little bit, probably scares you. My scare says, what if I'd have died waiting for that stress test? So I understand the prior authorization is an issue. Every health insurance plan in America has this problem. But, we actually had a bill before the legislature last year that dealt with it. But we recognize that those are three of the big ones. Now, there may be some others. I guarantee you there probably are. But those are three of the big ones that we've heard. They're plan design issues. And if you change prior authorization, or if you change drug formulary, or if you cover out of state, all those come with the cost. And right now we don't know the cost, but if you change some of those things and liberalize them a little bit, or made it more, made the formulary larger or whatever, maybe it costs $100 million or whatever, but somewhere, these are the things where you have to settle on what is a fix. I've defined three things that I've heard I think were problems, and now we're trying, and I'm sure there'll be other things you'll talk about, but the fix may be how you change the plan design and put it all together, and then once we do that, hopefully in a reasonable period of time this year, then we'll be able to say, all right, here's what we believe. Not everybody may be happy, but we hope most people would be, and that here is the fix to these kinds of things and other things. And one other thing that I believe we just want to talk about up front, and then I'm going to shut up, but I believe this is an issue. Came up in the Point Pleasant hearing where I was. Even though the plan premiums do not change next year, everything remains the same, we are aware, and I assume that some of you will be made aware, and some of you won't be happy about this, I'm sure, but this plan by the law says it's an ability to pay plan, meaning that we set these premiums based upon your ability to pay it. The only way to interpret that would mean you got to set up a tier of salary schedules so that as PIA participants, you all make a certain salary, and wherever you fall in that salary range, that's the premium you will pay. There are currently 10 tiers for Plan A. Here's where they are: 0 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 36, 36 to 42, 42 to 50, 50 to 65, 62.5, 62.5 to 75, 75 to 100, 100 to 125, and 125 and over. Now, because those tiers are pretty tight, those of you who get either incremental pay increases or the teacher's pay increase this year, or the state employee pay increase this year, chances are you may be bumped up a tier so that you'll see an increase in your individual premium based upon the plan design as it has been for years, or you won't. And so a part of a fix may be to look at, and this is a cost fix, to look at those tiers to make sure that, because that's a significant factor in there, and that is because we know, for example, that under Plan A, there are 13,000 people who are on the 20 to 30,000. There are 6,500 that are 30 to 36, 7,399, 36 to 42, and 7,000. So a large number of Plan A participants are in that tight range. So that, I have heard and listened to people say, well, I don't care what you say, my premiums went up. Well, that's why. It's because of the ability to pay thing and the fact that the tier. Now, the year that the plan as it was originally designed for this year went to 5 tiers, but that's not on the table tonight. But I will tell you that if I'm looking at what is a fix for me, and I'm a participant, and I'm an active, and my salary's driving my premium, then we may have to discuss how these tiers are put together to see how that drives your individual cost. So, Madam Chairman, those are just some of the things after 20, is this number 22, 21, that I have seen and wanted to come as the head of this task force, running this PI task force, to give you a brief report, since this is probably one of the largest groups that we'll have here, as to what we've seen. I'm sure I've missed some things, but I just wanted to make those opening comments that we're listening, hearing you, and trying to quantify what you're saying, and then trying to put together a plan to react. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask that we get started with listening to the comments, and then at the end of tonight's session, that my colleagues here at the table, I invite them to introduce themselves and make some remarks if they would like to. But the idea is that this is truly a listening session, that we don't intend to answer questions because there are a lot of you, and we want to hear your voices. So I have, as you came in, you signed the list, and I'll just call your name as you signed in. I invite you to come up to the microphone here so we can be sure to hear everyone. And also, we are streaming this session live, and it will be recorded. There are a lot of our task force members here tonight, but some are not. And so we want to be able to make sure that, again, your comments are heard by all members of the task force. And I invite you to be respectful of one another and the task force in making your comments to the point and concise, because again, we've got a lot of folks that we want to hear from. So, and I'm going to ask for your understanding. If I can't read your writing, or if I mispronounce your name, I apologize in advance. Yeah, this is my 8th one, so I've mispronounced a lot of names. Sorry about that. Our first speaker is John Riddle.
No, I know John. Hey,
And next will be Patricia Sneed after John.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I also want to thank Mike Hall for those interesting comments. It kind of slants, if you will, some of the things that I was going to talk about, because those of us in this room don't have the knowledge or the input that you folks have. But I do appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Let me introduce myself. I'm John Riddle, and I'm presently the president of the Jackson County Association of Retired School Employees. I'm past state president of VARS, which is the West Virginia Association of Retired Employees. I'm speaking on behalf of over 33,000 retired school employees. That's teachers, bus drivers, secretaries, school nurses, on maintenance folks, whatever. I also want to add to my comments tonight that we do not have a member representing from the VARS board on the task force. But be that as it may, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight on some of the issues that naturally I'm going to be speaking from a retiree standpoint. I will make my comments as brief as possible and succinctly as you requested. Many of our members are the very employees who were employed at a time when we were given insurance in lieu of pay raises. I know that in several of the sessions that I've listened to over the Facebook and online, that has been brought to your attention, and I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing that, but I felt like I needed to bring that out again tonight. As retirees, we do not receive or get pay increases to help offset the increases of the copays and the deductibles. Retirees do not receive this cost of living increase. Therefore, we feel that the state should come up with a way or fund the major portion of the medical inflation for retirees. Second point I want to make. Retirees live on a fixed income and can at least afford yearly increases in their premiums or out-of-pocket costs. I mean, that's a no-brainer for retirees that we're on a fixed income and we can't afford those things. Third point I want to make. In the last several years, premiums, copays, and deductibles, etc., have all increased. Most of our retirees have been retired for many years. Those of you that on a retired or fixed income realize what inflation has done to those pensions. If you look at what the government says, if their figures are correct, roughly 3% for the cost of living increases yearly, multiply that by the number of 20 years or 30 years, we have retirees who have been retired for over 30 years with a 3% inflation or cost of living increase. Many retirees have issues as it relates to using their insurance at this point in time of their life. So this cost increase is driving the costs up for them. Another point that I want to make, the state has failed to keep up with the pace with the medical inflation. And of course, I appreciate what Mr. Hall indicated to us there. I want to call him Senator Hall, but that's when I first met him. He was a senator. We realize that there's figures and facts that we're not aware of, and if you're going to share those with us, and the fact that the committee is going to try to make decisions to fix, if you will, PEIA. We want to emphasize, and I really want to make a point on this, we want to emphasize the fact that we're happy with and pleased with, if you will, the cooperation and the work that we're doing with Humana, and encourage this to continue. We strongly oppose any sort of voucher plan that would require retirees to purchase their own insurance and then with the support of a fixed voucher system. This shifts the cost to the retirees and stops the guaranteed benefit structure. Another point I want to make, for the last 2 years, VARS has proposed or had introduced a bill for a gas severance tax to help fund issues with PEI and other funding issues with no avail. We therefore continue to propose an increase to the severance tax on natural gas and the Utica Sands to help pay for PEI and other unfunded needs in West Virginia. West Virginia needs to follow the example of Alaska and how they have taxed our natural resources. West Virginia would be a rich state had we done this with our coal and timber. It should also be noted that 80% of the gas that we are actually creating or pumping out of the ground right now, 80% of that gas is out of state, is going out of state. So you need to be aware of that. Finally, I want to again thank the task force. You've got an arduous task in front of you. But as I listened to the other sessions that we talked about, I don't envy your task, not at all. I've listened to most of the sessions, as I said earlier, that have been communicated or through Facebook. And I've had some interesting ideas, and you made reference to that this evening. Most of all, I heard the frustrations and the horrible stories of families struggling to make ends meet. I assure you that many of the thousands of retirees that I represent tonight are just as frustrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Patricia Sneed, and then the next will be Spud Terry.
I'm short. Anyway, my name is Pat Sneed. Some of you, I've been in your classrooms because I'm a retired teacher, and I still have to do substitute teaching to make ends meet. So my phone rings off the hook. Not because, well, they need substitute teachers, and the main place they get them is their retired teachers. You need to keep your retired teachers healthy. Because, exactly. I go in the teacher's lounge. Yes, what lounge? Exactly. Some of the schools don't have a teacher's lounge. They have a bathroom, which sometimes you get to use. So, these are things, and what John just said, I'm a member of that organization. I'm also a member of the Coalition of Retired Public Employees. I'm a member of the Alliance for Retired Americans. I'm also a very proud member of AFT Kanawha, representing retirees here in Kanawha. Um, and I'm also a member of the Silverhead Legislature, which we have groups that get together that try to propose things that we see as senior citizens that need addressed. And everything that John just mentioned, I also can vouch for that a lot of people that are retired. Oh, the other place I'm a member of is I'm a member of my senior center, which I go every day for a good hot meal. So these are things that, and the retired teacher that I talked to there at my senior center complain about having to go to the doctor. We don't get any kind of increase. You know, I was at the strike every day. Well, work stoppage. I was there every day with my sign. But while you're there, my dog wasn't in that race. I didn't get any pay increase. But PEIA does affect your retirees. We're on limited income. We don't get so you people that are not retired yet, try to make sure you bump up all the money you can, right, Mickey? All the money that you have in your money that before you retire, because your PEIA depends on it. How much you have to pay depends on it. And but you don't get any pay raises after you retire, which I submit that the legislature does need to look at that, because we have poor teachers, retired teachers. Some of the ones that retired years ago, like we have some 90-year-old people that have retired years ago, they didn't make very much money. And my dad was one of those. Didn't make much money. My mother was a retired nurse. When she started working, her pension plan that she signed up in, she ended up with $100 a month. That was her retirement plan. You know, they were in their 90s. I've lost both of them in 2012. But my dad's pension from teaching was $300 and some a month, because he wanted to include his wife on his pension. He always thought he was going to die before Mother did, and she'd get his pension. Well, she fooled him. She died before him. So, but these are all things, and we are in a rich state. We need to tax that shale gas. That's ours. That's ours. That's our resources, not China. Not China. That's ours. I have family. I'm from Raleigh County, but they were in a holler up in Lick Run. They were here in the Civil War. That's how far my relatives go back. My dad used to talk about Civil War stories. So we need to tax this gas, and we need to have consideration for the retirees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sneed. Our next speaker is Spud Terry, and Nydia Henderson will follow him.
there is no time limit. We try to keep the meeting to 2 hours, but you know we don't want to frustrate. You know, we want people to say what they have to say.
Well, another chance for the task force to consider what PEIA is, what it was intended to be. First of all, it was PEIB, and then it morphed into an agency. But it's never was intended to be a smooth running, self-edifying insurance company. It was intended, and still is, to treat the employees, the teachers, the public employees, all the folks that are working for the state or had worked for the state and retired, to make sure that they have quality health care, and the board and then the agency wants to do that in a right way for the least amount of expense to each of the participants in the plan. The retirees, which I have been involved with for almost 20 years now, I'm a volunteer lobbyist. I'm there every day. I have talked to many of the folks up here. During that 20 years, there has been little to no gain for the retirees, and a bunch of cost increases through the PEI, through the co-pays, all the drug tiers, all that thing is killing the retirees. The retirees are the most vulnerable people affected by this plan. So I think the fix, I don't think we have very much, to do with the fix. We might give you some anecdotal stories about something we feel that's wrong or something that we feel is right. But it is the responsibility of state government, the executive and the legislative, and to some extent, the judicial, to keep their promises, keep the working people to where they have good benefits, realizing that this plan is a group plan, The young folks here, where I have seen plenty, I'm 75 years old, and I've been through hell, like a lot of retirees. We have retirees that, thousands of retirees that are over 90, they can't get out, they can't go to the legislature, ergo, I go. Some people think I'm crazy. There's people sitting up here that have probably expressed that to me, but I am still there fighting for the people who can't fight their own battles. There's a lot of good groups out there, and the legislature's met a lot of the folks. There's people who are really concerned about their members, their peers, their family. PEIA is something that is a good thing, but it needs a little tweaking here and there. That's not our job. It's up to the legislature and the governor. I have done all that. Hey, what's the deal, really? We need more money for the program. There's ways to get more money. And so my request is from the retirees. I know a whole lot of retirees that are worse off than I am, and sometimes I think, well, maybe not, because it's just like this past week, everything was going pretty good. So I go to the dentist, and he's charging me $6,000 to fix 2 teeth that another partial will fit on. Our public employees, retirees, they don't have dental. Some of our teachers through the county or whatever has some dental and some vision. Our public employees are taking a beating. They are taking a beating. They don't have their teeth. Their teeth rots out. It causes digestive stuff. I mean, this is not anything new to anybody up here. I mean, our state, you know, we're obese, we're backward, we're all these things that people want to call us, but we are damn good people. We are. So I'll close. I don't want to take time. I know there's a lot of, and I've made a non-paying career out of talking to folks, and so I'm going to keep up as long as I can go, and I hope there's other people that'll fall in line behind me, because it is worthwhile to stop suffering. It is worthwhile to give people a little dignity. It is worthwhile to do something for your friends and your neighbors and your family, and heaven help me to continue to do that. And I'll close with telling this group the same way that I've told governors, I've told the legislature, try to do something for the retirees. They're worried. They've heard the things coming out. Well, you know, if they get rid of the retirees, then the plan would be good. They've heard the stuff about we're going to privatize everything. You know, it's a done deal, so no point to come out and do this. But I have better faith in our state to take care of its own. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linville. Nydia? And then Carla Linville will be next.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Nydia Henderson, and I'm a PEIA Medicare retiree. However, now I work in the private sector as an addictions therapist because of the opiate epidemic. But what I bring to the table today is a little bit of a different focus regarding the wellness programs of PEIA as they affect the active employees. And I think I have a unique perspective on this because for 18 years, I served as PEIA's Health Promotions Director overseeing those wellness programs. I retired a little over a year ago, and since that time, I think you all know that with the launch of Go 365, it ended in pretty much disaster. And that in large part was probably due to the fact that it was tied to penalties that were very punitive. But what I want to share with you tonight is the fact that there's a very proud legacy of wellness programs in West Virginia. So I'm going to take you down a little bit of history, and this is going to only take a few minutes, I assure everybody. But these may be some things that you aren't aware of. In the year 2000, PEIA was the first state in the nation to offer for state employees a tobacco cessation program that was also tied to a premium differential. In other words, if you quit smoking tobacco, you got a premium reduction. You also got all the supports you needed to quit tobacco. That premium differential was increased several times by the Finance Board, and it's still in place today. In 1999, PEIA had a very small worksite wellness program involving only some 90 sites. The agency at that time made a concerted effort to expand those programs. Why? Because improving the lifestyle habits of our employees is good not only for their lives and their families, but for state efficiency and making workers more productive, and yes, cost aversion, so that people stay healthier. Over the years, that program changed substantially. By the time I left, we had 900 work sites participating, and we offered a range of services, some of which I would implore you to reinstate. Those included fitness discounts, exercise assessments at work sites for employees, fitness classes at work sites. We even brought farmers markets to work sites, which was a win-win for West Virginia farmers and for our employees to have access to healthy food. We offered them nutrition services, stress management services. We brought yoga and Tai Chi to the work sites. These were hands-on, meaningful services for which there were wonderful outcomes. Was it perfect? No, it was not perfect. But I'll remind you that the perfect is the enemy of the good. And rather than sustain these programs, the decision was made by the agency to discontinue this program in its entirety and replace it with a web-based system, which, as you all know, no longer exists. The other thing you may not be aware of is in the year 2004, PEIA embarked on a number of innovative programs, and I brought along, it's kind of corny, but I want you to see it. This is from the Council of State Governments. We won an Innovation Award for the work of PEIA on behalf of children and the Games for Health Project, which promote exergaming for children, which at that time was very innovative. It was a radical idea to use, that technology for exercise, making it fun. We competed against all states in the nation and won this award. It was also during that time we innovated because we knew we had the talent here. The Face-to-Face Diabetes Program, which uses the services of specially trained pharmacists and helps people with their lifestyle issues and medication management. It was based on the Asheville, North Carolina project with proven outcomes to reduce emergency room visits. And this program was highly successful. However, in recent years, the agency made a decision to cap that program at a 2-year limit. I would submit to you that diabetes in most cases is a lifelong condition. It's not capped at 2 years. Also, at that time, we created the PEIA Weight Management Program. That program uses the services of dietitians, exercise physiologists, personal trainers, and behavioral health coaches. We started with 1 site, and we have ended up with over 60. This program also has been recognized by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We have the talent in West Virginia to make corrections to any kind of health problems we have. We have the talent, we have the innovation, we have the creativity. But unfortunately, what I'm here to tell you today, I'm sounding the alarm, because what's happening now is there's an all-out assault on these programs, and I don't say that lightly. The Worksite Wellness Program has been eliminated. I will ask you, what has replaced it? I am asking you to ask the administration, what is there to replace it? The Face-to-Face Diabetes Program should be reinstated to a lifelong program. It has proven results. And thirdly, the weight management program is under attack. And I say that because the behavioral health coaches have been notified they are out of a job at the end of the month. And for those of you who know anything about weight management, yes, exercise and nutrition are key components, but if you don't address the roadblocks in people's minds and emotions that enable them to participate, you've lost half the battle. So my final thoughts are to reiterate. Number 1, where's the replacement for Worksite Wellness? Number 2, would you consider reinstating Face-to-Face to its original intent? Number 3, please, I implore you to keep a close watch on what's happening to the weight management program, because I have reason to believe the real purpose behind what the administration is doing is to kill the program. And finally, for those of you who don't have it, PEIA surveyed the members as to what they want to see in wellness programs, and we got over 4,000 responses, and you know what they told us? They wanted physical activity access to services, they wanted access to healthy food, they want stress management services. So I thank you for this opportunity.
I welcome
Thank you, Nidia. The next speaker is Carla Linville, and after Carla will be Dinah Atkins.
Good evening. My name is Carla Linville, and I'm a secretary for Cabell County Schools. I'm a third-generation public school employee for the state of West Virginia. My grandmother, Theda Hastings, was a cook in Kanawha County at Bell Elementary. My mother is a retired teacher from Kanawha County Schools. She began her career as a kindergarten aide at Bell Elementary and worked her way through college at night. 13 years. 13 years it took my mother to receive her teaching degree, taking 1 or 2 classes a semester until her dream and goal was realized. She retired in 2008. My parents now live with me, and I take care of them and deal with the retiree issues of the health care we have there as well. I have worked for Cabell County Schools since 2000. I do feel fortunate to have the job I do with the benefits I receive. I am also a small business owner's wife and have been for the last 30 years. I have lived our entire married life with my husband working at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Our family has a strong work ethic, as do most of the families represented here this evening. While I don't have all the answers, I do have thoughts regarding what I see as problems and as possible solutions. I think it is horrible that those of us who are public employees are paying different amounts for the same coverage. The entire tier system is flawed. The more we make, the more premiums you take. That is just not right. If you and I both go to the store and buy the same apples, we pay the same. I do not pay more or less than you based on our income. I must say, the one thing last year's proposal that I do agree with is the different levels of coverage. I do think it's appropriate that there be a single employee coverage, single employee with children coverage, employee and spouse coverage, and family coverage. What I don't agree with is including our spouse's income when determining what our premiums will be, or our total income, or that our total income be used for determining the premium. What my husband brings home, or what extra money I earn by working ball games, giving the ACT, working a second job, all to make ends meet, quite frankly, is none of PEIA's business, and I should not be penalized. I should not be penalized for working hard to provide for my family. Currently, the cost to run or maintain PEIA is $921 million, with an expected increase of at least 8% a year over the next few years. That means we need an additional $74 million this year, $150 more million the next year, and each year thereafter, it will just keep compounding. While I personally am not in favor of raising the gas severance tax as a source of income to provide the monetary shortfall to PEIA, I must thank Linda Thompson, President of the West Virginia School Service Personnel Association, and Joe White, Executive Director of the WVS-SPA, for at least attempting to solve this shortfall and being ever so diligent in their efforts. They were knocking on legislative doors long before a walkout was talked about. While it may seem to some that a gas severance tax is a viable answer, let's look at that for just a moment. Currently, that gas tax could bring in $70 million, and poof, PEIA would be fixed for this year, maybe even for next year. Past that, there is no guarantee. Yes, we have the supply, but if we increase the gas severance tax by an additional 2.5%, will we still have the same demand? Let's say the demand decreases in 2 years, in part due to severance by 50%. Well, then we would only collect $35 million, and that would not fund PEIA, and that would put us right back where we are. It is short-sighted and would do nothing but put a Band-Aid on our problem. Let's talk about the possible China investment in our state in regards to natural gas. This investment would bring good, high-paying, career-level jobs. It would also bring enormous tax revenues. It is focused on refining the natural gas here within our state. So rather than purely extracting our gas, our resources, we are refining them, adding additional value, and then selling it both within and outside of our state. With a shrinking population, this influx of nearly 20 times our state's current annual budget, along with the pay for the employees, we have the potential to realize an enormous influx of dollars that we don't currently have. The construction side of this investment will generate jobs for those in the skilled trades. It will ripple also into other industries within our state, trucking companies, professional services, and all of its affiliated businesses. The result of this potential investment will be enormous improvement in our state's economy and increased tax revenues to fund items such as PEIA. increased wages for public employees, and every other expectation we have of our state government. This will also improve our county budgets, especially in the counties which will house the sites. Marshall University will benefit. Our vocational schools will benefit. The ripples of this potential investment will be felt from Weirton to Welch, from Martinsburg to Matewan, and all points in between. A good example of this is the Brady project in Greenup County, Kentucky. The decision made by Brady Industries to build a $1.3 billion aluminum production facility will be a huge economic boost for Kentucky. Kentucky also made the climate friendly to Brady Industries to entice them to their state and region. The ripple effect this investment will be significant and provide positive change for the region for generations to come. I personally am also not in favor of raising the corporate net income tax. I keep hearing many members say it will not hurt the mom and pop shops. Well, I am the face of small business with less than 10 employees. We're not a huge corporation, and it will affect and hurt us. We do not have a tax problem in the state of West Virginia. We have a taxpayer problem. Our citizens are leaving the state every single day for a better life elsewhere. This means we are losing tax dollars in all shapes and forms. We are losing students in our schools, and therefore we lose positions in each of our respected counties and schools. We need career-level jobs here in our state. We need to make our state more appealing for business to come invest here. When our economy grows, we are able to generate more tax revenue with lower tax percentages. This would be a win-win for everyone. In the last 5 years, which also coincides with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, insurance premiums have increased 105% nationally in the 39 states that are using healthcare.gov. In West Virginia, that number is a staggering 169%. That is huge. This is not just a problem here in the state of West Virginia, but a problem nationwide. With the passage of the Affordable Care Act, insurance companies were permitted to drop coverage of businesses who have less than 10 employees. And yes, this happened to my family's small business as well. The insurance companies have a monopoly going right now, and it's time that we as citizens demand change and regulation with the insurance companies. This didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. Then there is the big pharma. Let's talk about a monopoly there. Let's look at CVS Caremark, who is currently the pharmacy benefit manager for our prescription benefits. Granted, the state has already eliminated them in the Medicaid and WIC programs that has saved the state $38 million. Now it's time to look at it from the angle of PEIA. In 2017, the state of Kentucky paid CVS a total of $1.68 billion on pharmacy benefits. Of that amount, only $1 billion went to the pharmacies to pay for prescription costs. $680 million. That stayed with the pharmacy benefits manager, who was CVS Caremark, who also have our own coverage. That is a lot of money to push papers, and CVS will not give us a reason on what else it was spent on. Currently, pharmacy benefit managers set all the rules with little to no government oversight. They have a monopoly. That's time that stops as well. We deserve and we must be treated as state employees with respect and dignity, not with punishments or to be looked down upon. Go 365 possibly could have been a good thing if made to have been an incentive. We all know the cost of insuring healthy people is much less than insuring unhealthy people. Give us incentives, not punishments. Do not treat us like we are toddlers. In order to fix PIA, our government must be accountable, find the waste, such as with CVS and Caremark, and eliminate it. Open up this great state of West Virginia for business. Bring new taxpayers to our state. Grow our economy. This is how we fix our problems, and we take care of our state's greatest resource, and that's her people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Dinah Atkins is next, and after Dinah will be Jay O'Neill.
Good evening. My name is Dinah Adkins, and I am the co-president of the local affiliate of the WVEA, the Kanawha County chapter. We thank you for all the efforts you're putting into this very, very difficult task. We know that you're working hard, and it's times it's not as pleasant as you would like for it to be, but we have given you a task, and we expect a good outcome. The people of West Virginia are worth it. We can no longer allow public education to be sliding behind in every legislative session. The medical provides, what you provide through our PEIA program makes public education strong. It makes us a place where people want to come to West Virginia. We can no longer allow companies to come in and take from the people of West Virginia and leave nothing behind. We ask that you find a way to do that. We can't have a Band-Aid fix anymore. We need a heart transplant. And we need you to help us transplant the hearts and minds of the legislature so that they feel that education is as important to everyone in the state as it is to educators. So we're asking you, we're asking you to dig deep in your heart and do what is great. Some people will say to you, well, this is West Virginia. What do you expect? Well, because it is West Virginia, we expect much. And we will stand behind you, but we expect you to move forward and to move West Virginia forward. Thank you.
Jay O'Neill, and next will be Steve Thompson. Thank you, Dinah.
My name is Jay O'Neill, and I'm a teacher here in Charleston. For years, PEIA has undergone cuts as our leaders appropriated no extra money for the program. Every November at public hearings, people shared heart-wrenching stories about how all these higher costs affected them. Nothing changed. For years, many of us called, emailed, and visited our legislatures asking them to provide additional funding for PEIA. Nothing changed. Finally, in February, teachers and school service personnel walked out of their workplaces and demanded real change on the PEIA crisis. Guess what? Something changed. We're now here in a good faith effort, hoping that the task force really will make lasting changes and truly fix PEIA. Everyone knows that the problems boil down to money, so I have some proposals that I think would help solve the funding crisis. In 2006, our governor and legislators passed legislation that eventually eliminated the business franchise tax and cut the corporate net income tax from 9% to 6.5%. They said this was done to attract businesses to our state and grow the economy. As many know, this was a failed experiment. It didn't work. The state now has fewer jobs and collects about $180 million less per year because of these tax cuts. This experiment has not worked in other states either. Just look at places like Oklahoma and Kansas. One reason is because tax rates are only a small incentive for companies in deciding where to relocate. Other factors, like a well-educated workforce and good schools, are often much bigger incentives. So by returning the corporate net income tax, a tax that is paid by large out-of-state corporations, back to 9%, the state is estimated to bring in $55 million during the next fiscal year. Many people have mentioned raising the natural gas severance tax. This tax is primarily paid by out-of-state corporations who harvest and then ship most of our natural gas out of state. Raising it from 5% to 7.5%, it's the same rate as Texas, would bring in an estimated $76 million next year. So, and we've talked about this, PEIA costs about $50 million extra every year. These two taxes combined would bring in about $131 million next year, leaving us with an $81 million surplus that could be put towards the next fiscal year. And in fact, I've done the math using the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policies analysis of the Department of Revenue's data. These two taxes would bring in enough money to cover PEIA's rising cost for the next 5 years, and even after PEIA costing $250 million more than it does now, would leave us with $71 million extra left over. And I know some will say these taxes can be volatile, and that's true. So I would encourage the task force to look at a few other revenue options, like reinstating the business franchise tax, reinstating the estate tax, and even implementing a 3% wealth surcharge on incomes above $200,000 a year. All of these revenue sources would not affect regular working West Virginians. We did not walk out of our classrooms to see taxes raised on our fellow citizens. They've already seen the tax increases last year in the raising of the gasoline tax and DMV fees, among others. But who hasn't seen tax increases? Large out-of-state corporations. In fact, earlier this year, our governor had a just cut taxes and win plan. And it sounded good until you realized he meant cutting the business inventory tax, a tax mostly paid by out-of-state companies and that helps to directly fund county schools. My point in all this is that there's plenty of money out there to fund PEIA. It's just a matter of priorities. For a long time, under both Democrats and Republicans, our state leadership has prioritized large corporations instead of regular working citizens. If the task force wants to really fix PEIA and truly make a change, put people first, not corporations. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Thompson. Next will be Betsy Atwater.
Good evening. My name is Steve Thompson. I've been a public employee for 25 of the last 30 years, and for the past 18 years in my current position, I'm a PEI insurance benefit plan participant. Along with several employee representatives here tonight, including at least one who is now a member of your task force, I have spoken at the PEI public hearings for the PEI Finance Board several times over the last 15 years, including here in Charleston, in Huntington, and in Beckley. I've represented public employees as Vice President of AFSCME Local 3248 and as President of the Capital Chapter and as a statewide Chief Steward for the West Virginia Public Workers Union, UE Local 170. I've also represented public employees in the public employee grievance system for the past 25 years. I'm here tonight to speak as a PEI benefit earner and as a state taxpayer. I am currently unaffiliated, and my remarks tonight do not represent my employer. I would be remiss, however, if we did not also address some of the mistakes that PEI has made and continues to make. Not that we should be afraid of making mistakes, but we need to learn from these mistakes and do better. So I want to thank the PEI Task Force for holding these outreach public hearings and for streaming them live. It's been very beneficial to all of us to follow along. I want to remind you that the authority that the task force has is very, very broad. We want you to look at the big, big picture and make recommendations that will benefit all of the West Virginians. So what exactly is PEI and how did we get here? As you've learned, PEI is an earned contractual benefit that public workers, teachers, school service personnel earn every day. Retirees dedicated their life to public service earned every bit of this health benefit. We earn these benefits, we pay for them in the form of monthly premiums withheld from our historically low pay. We pay for PEI insurance benefits in the form of deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses and co-pays. Sadly, a lot of people in the state do not have a health insurance benefit package from their employer. Often, in fact, we hear criticism of public workers exactly because we have this health insurance benefit while other employees working for private employers do not have an insurance benefit plan. Worse, public employees have actually been under attack for the majority of my adult life. Almost 40 years ago, while walking near the base where we were stationed, and while we were walking in our dress uniforms, no less, we had bags of garbage thrown at us from passing cars. Demeaning public employees and teachers and retirees simply because we have a health insurance benefit that we earn is also demoralizing at best. Worse still, the combination of low pay and frequently reduced benefits are making it harder and harder to recruit and retain people in the public service of this state, as indicated by the epidemic staff shortages throughout state government and throughout our education system. Covering the workload for unfilled vacant positions also creates stress and usually for no additional compensation. Often we are not even allowed to earn overtime. Yes, PEIA is in a crisis of sorts, not necessarily because of a lack of funding, not necessarily because of lifestyle issues, but because of the runaway medical and pharmaceutical inflation that has been left unchecked for years. And as you've heard, every health insurance plan in the country is in fact experiencing these kind of problems. When I started as a public employee almost 30 years ago, PEI was in trouble back then too, perhaps even worse than today. My employer at the time was looking for a new insurance company because our health insurance provider premiums kept going up and our benefits kept getting cut. And that sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? So for 30 years, this has been going on. The other problem, portability, that's still a problem. Also, too many public employees are paid so low that we qualify for public assistance programs. And everyone seems to enjoy demonizing recipients of public assistance and demonizing public employees while failing to realize some of these same people clean our schools and maintain our highways in full-time, low-paid positions. It is also important to remember that health insurance is not health care, and I want to encourage the task force to consider the implications of expanding health care services, such as under a PEIA, Public Health and Medicaid for All system. Insurance may facilitate access to health care, but in and of itself, health insurance is not health care. And what happens as a state if we don't recognize the benefits of health care delivery? A little less than 30 years ago, the West Virginia Bureau for Public Health withdrew all funding and support for its pediatric public health dental services. It took one generation, about 15 years, before West Virginia experienced a statewide pediatric dental health crisis. Being a full-time and low-paid public employee at the time, my children qualified for public assistance in several forms, including pediatric public health dental services. Fortunately, our local county health department dental clinic saw the writing on the wall with the privatization of dental health on the horizon and implemented a sliding scale fee for services that not only saved that county health department pediatric clinic, that health clinic was able to expand their coverage to the counties in the surrounding area that did not fare so well through the privatization. This sliding scale fee for service style of Medicaid and public health model for all could be a model health delivery system in West Virginia and could be a model for the nation. A Medicare for all system might be better recognized than PEIA beyond the West Virginia markets. Currently, 600,000 West Virginians are covered by Medicaid, and expanding it to include the 2,300 PEI participants and public health can be a game changer. Can it work? Virginia, in the last 2 weeks, just expanded its Medicaid program, bringing in 300,000 uninsured citizens in that state. A Medicaid PEI public health plan would likely be recognized in Virginia with very little administrative headaches. Incorporating a public health delivery system throughout county health departments funded by a hybrid of PEI Medicaid plan with 850,000 participants could leverage better deals in medical and pharmaceutical contracts. While county health departments operating across our state, revitalizing those service delivery facilities will promote better access to health care services in our most underserved rural communities, benefiting everyone in the state. At 5% administrative overhead costs, Medicaid is likely the most efficient provider. Offering a student loan forgiveness program for public health practitioners, public employees, and teachers who agree to stay and serve in our state could also help stop the brain drain. I suggest a modest $5,000 student loan incentive payment plan for each 5-year commitment to serve in West Virginia, paid after the 5-year increment of service with a lifetime cap of perhaps $25,000. I recommend opposing the privatization of PEIA because, like the privatization of pediatric dental health, the privatization of highway construction activities in West Virginia tells a precautionary tale about the increased cost of privatization resulting in reduced services. About 10 years ago, West Virginia DOH was directed to abandon highway construction projects and move into what are called core maintenance plan activities. DOH workers have essentially been reduced to mowing lawns and clearing snow. The heavy equipment at DOH was sold for pennies on the dollar, making even basic patching significantly more difficult, less accessible, and more expensive. Bad roads and flooding culverts are likely making everyone in West Virginia sick. Not having the equipment means that our DOH can't even keep those culverts clear. And just like removing support for the county health pediatric dental program, these decisions are not caused by public employees. These are management decisions. Just like instead of PEI beneficiaries incentives, the Pathways to Wellness program and several others you heard about, which provided exercise and office visits and employee education programs, PEI management decided to dish out punishment programs instead. These are not public relations problems, these are management problems. Punishing public employees and retirees for failing to address the real problem of medical and pharmaceutical inflation is a management problem, not a public employee lifestyle issue. I'm absolutely appalled to hear certain people suggest that it is in any way appropriate to punish PEIA recipients for a benefit that we earn and pay for out of our low wages rather than offer us wellness programs and other incentives. So, I would encourage everyone to fill out the form and describe for these folks what kind of incentive programs we would like and wellness programs, because they're very beneficial. For desk jockeys like myself, Tai Chi and yoga are extremely helpful. Sitting at a desk is a killer just as bad as smoking. A better lifestyle option choice for low-income West Virginians would also be to allow supplemental nutrition plan recipients to be able to use the SNAP cards at local farmers markets, increasing access to quality food while supporting our local agricultural economies. And I say this because many of our public employees qualify for SNAP benefits. Attacking public employees creates an environment of toxic stress and is associated with real costs to PEIA. Financial, health care, and job-related stressors are major contributors to health care costs. This toxic stress absolutely has a cost to PEIA. In April, we learned that 141,000 mental health encounters by PEIA participants during July 2016 to June 2017, which no doubt includes depression-related issues. Those clinical encounters cost $13,668,000. PEIA covered $8,939,000 of that, resulting in 36,508 antidepressant pharmaceutical benefit utilizations at a further cost to PEIA of $3,500,000. To treat stressed out, depressed public employees, PEIA shelled out $14 million, and PEI participants paid another $5 million out of pocket. An underlying silent killer related to mental health and depression, suicides are now at an epidemic level in the United States. Suicides increased 30% since 1999, with a suicide rate in West Virginia 7th highest in the nation at 16 per 100,000. Anyone paying attention also knows that veterans are being hit particularly hard. 22 veterans are reported to commit suicide in the United States every day. Suicide is now the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. 54% do not have a known diagnosed mental health condition. Part of this stress comes from the fear of losing our health insurance benefit coverage, or part of the fear of going bankrupt because the health insurance doesn't go far enough. For example, PEI participants can opt into various dental plans, but like the variety of health plans we must choose from, guessing what your future health care needs will be is often very tricky. That isn't health care, that's Russian roulette. And what happens if I can't afford the Cadillac plan because I can barely make ends meet? For example, I opted in one dental plan, got regular checkups, and then I had dental emergency. That emergency wasn't covered. So the first cost was $250 out of pocket. The second treatment was $800, which they wanted up front. That's a financial stressor. Additionally, we have an acute healthcare provider shortage, which in this dental instance resulted in them not being able to schedule the treatment that I needed for 2 months. I was lucky things did not get worse while I had to wait. You've also heard cases where PEI bureaucrats, not the doctor, delayed necessary surgeries and required expensive pre-surgeries and alternative treatments, causing delays. The PEI requires increasing the cost, delaying our suffering, and ending up still needing the surgery. We also heard that the expense to comply with the punishment program in one case was over $400 of out-of-pocket expenses, so not to be penalized, $500. But if your numbers didn't come back in an acceptable range, you got penalized anyway. In scientific terms, that is called a double whammy. PEI is in a crisis, specifically because the runaway medical and pharmaceutical inflation has been left unchecked for 30 years. As you have heard, every health insurance plan in the country is suffering this. A Medicaid PEI public health system for all might be better recognized than PEI beyond West Virginia markets. That could address portability. Virginia, in the last 2 weeks, expanded its Medicaid program to include 300,000 uninsured citizens in that state. A West Virginia Medicaid plan for all should easily be recognized in Virginia. A national plan of sorts, a PEI Medicaid plan for all, might in fact be recognized across the entire country. So what we need to do is we need to recognize the 800-pound gorilla in the room is not the lifestyle choices of public employees. These cost drivers bankrupting PEIA are the 6% medical inflation and the 12% annual pharmaceutical inflation rates. Demonizing public employees does not solve medical and pharmaceutical inflation problems. However, when our pay and retirement is frozen, as it has been for most of the past 10 years, increasing our premiums, cutting benefits, and increasing our out-of-pocket co-pays and deductibles is a pay cut. Some have called it a backward step. 10 years ago, speaking to the PEI Finance Board, the Charleston Gazette, in reference to premium increases and benefit cuts, called the PEI Finance Board pickpockets. 10 years ago, 2 PEI Finance Board members were receiving $5,000 a year pay raises, including the PEI Finance Board member who was the governor's office enforcer of the pay freeze. At that time, several employees in PEI management were also getting $5,000 or more a year in pay raise. 10 years ago, I asked how many people in the audience had received a $5,000 pay raise, and not a single hand went up. Today, one-year PEI task force public employee had his pay increased $65,000 in the last 3 years, from $242,000 to $307,000, a pay increase greater than most of the public employees earn in a year. I would be willing to guess that employer has now announced a 5% in-state tuition increase. Not being able to afford to send our children to college in this state causes stress, and that in-state tuition increase can also be considered another pay cut. And so what did the state do about medical and pharmaceutical inflation 10 years ago? We created a Pharmaceutical Cost Management Review Council, which, according to an audit, had a minimal impact on lowering pharmaceutical prices in West Virginia. At the same time, the Office of Pharmaceutical Advocate spent $1.1 million between FY 2006 and FY 2008 and only saved $299,000 in pharmaceutical costs. Actual pharmaceutical utilization costs to PEIA increased since then by almost $100 million, $156 million in 2007 to $246 million in 2017. Interesting enough, one member of the Pharmaceutical Cost Management Review Council was also a CFO for a pharmaceutical company who raised the price of their $4 life-saving medicine from $100 to $600 per dose. Public outrage resulted in that company repackaging the $4 medicine and calling it a generic, and then they charged $300 for it. And then they offered a $300 rebate to insurance companies on the $600
Mr. Thompson?
price.
Yes. I appreciate all the detail that you have there. Do you have everything written out that you could provide us a copy? And we could share with the entire task force? I only asked the question because I have a list of at least 20 other people who'd like to talk tonight. And again, I value your research and everything, but I would like to have a written copy of your comments, please.
I can do that. If one or two people would be willing to volunteer their time to me, I can wrap this up fairly quickly, if that's okay. No? Okay. Thank you for your time, and I would like to address one issue that you've heard several times, and I would like to elaborate on it very quickly. One way to reduce utilization of pharmaceutical benefits is called the Colorado Solution, and there are several viable options on how to make a Colorado Solution work. Of the 17 states studied at the time, states that allow access to medical cannabis flower and leaf saw a combined reduction of $154 million in Medicaid Part D pharmaceutical utilization. On average, states with access to medical cannabis experience a 6 to 12% reduction in pharmaceutical utilization, which to PEIA, 6 to 12% equals $18 to $30 million a year, and that is a sustainable savings that we do not pay out. If we decriminalize cannabis and allow people to grow, we could result in the same benefit of $18 to $30 million in annual reduced pharmaceutical benefit utilizations. That would not be a tax, but it would be a savings to PEIA. Decriminalization would result in $17 million in annual law enforcement money that could be repurposed to PEIA. And we don't know how much we would save in our court and our overcrowded prisons. Is it a gateway drug? No more than alcohol, tobacco, and prescription drugs. And while habit forming, perhaps cannabis is far less addictive than alcohol and tobacco, and nowhere nearly as deadly. I thank you for your time, and I would, anybody who wants a copy, just let me know, and I'll give it to you.
Could we have, sir? Yeah. Thank you. If somebody could get, thank you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you again. We'll share that with the whole task force. Our next speaker is Betsy Atwater, and followed by Lisa Snyder.
Yes, my name is Betsy Atwater, and I stand strong with Fayette County. I'm here tonight to tell you that it is not my responsibility to find the solutions for this funding. And I know I have taught in this state for 42 years. I have given my blood, my sweat, and my tears to educate the disabled students in this state. And I deserve a great health care plan. I should not have to beg. And those of you on the task force that are trying to help us, good for you. The bottom line is, none of us are fools anymore. This is an elected official issue. We have stood in the dark. We let this happen to us. And the solution is not sitting at this table. The solution is at the voting booth, and we need to do it, or we're never going to have a fix. We're going to beg and beg and beg some more. And the Honorable Senator Carmichael, I said that to him in his office. I did not go to school, spend my money, my hundreds of thousands of dollars, and have the most advanced degree you can have and get paid for in West Virginia to stand up here and beg in front of you. Find the tax money, or we're going to find the money. We don't care how you find it. It's there. It's there for everything else that needs to be bought, including $32,000 couches. Find the money. Give us our plan.
Lisa. After Lisa will be Olivia Morris, and then Vera Miller.
Hi, my name is Lisa Siner, and I teach here in Kanawha County. I would like to share a personal story. One of my main concerns is I feel like we have people other than our doctors making medical decisions on our behalf. When my youngest daughter was 21, she had a stroke, and we were referred to the best neurologist here in Charleston, is what we were told. This is the man you want to see your daughter. He checked her over, did lots of tests, could not find any answers, so he wanted her sent to Cleveland Clinic for an evaluation. Again, she's 21 years old. I got something in the mail right away that it was denied, that we have neurologists here in Charleston. Why couldn't someone take care of her here in Charleston? I was on the phone many times, crying, begging. If you have never begged for health care for your child, you do not understand what that feels like. Finally, I got it approved. They did let me speak to a nurse at one point, and I got approved for her to just be evaluated there. Not treatments, just evaluated. After we made the trip up there, they told me they were able to fix her problem. They found it right away. And to make a long story short, they did approve what needed to be done finally, but it was a fight. I'm telling you, it was a fight. She had a defect in her heart and had been there her whole life. So they were able to fix it. I shudder to think what may have happened if I had not been the kind of person to not fight for her. Because I feel like people are making decisions that are not the doctors. If my doctor says I need this certain medicine, or if I need this certain treatment, or if I need to go to this certain facility, or my children need that, then that's what needs to happen. They are the medical professionals, not the people on the end of the phone sitting in the office at PEIA. So I just wanted to share that personal story and say, please look at that part of this when you go back to meet with each other, of listening to the professionals, the doctors who know what medicine you need. They know what treatments you need. Please listen to them. I was going to share some information with funding, but Jay did an excellent job with that. I would like to ask if, I know there's a lot of people who don't want to increase the gas severance tax. I know that. A lot of people don't want to increase the net corporate tax. Why not do a combination of a few things? That way you don't have one huge hit in one specific area, but a little bit in a lot of places would go a long way to provide some extra funding for PEIA. Again, thank you for looking at this, and I really hope we have a fix in the future.
Thank you, Lisa. Olivia Morris. Vera Miller's going to be next, and then Bob Cadle.
Hopefully this works. I'm a millennial. We do things differently. Okay. Hello. Today I would like to talk to you about taxing the gas. We have definitely heard some opposition to it, and that's actually what I want to talk to you about today. I know that many people have talked to you about the positives, and I have heard several things from legislators about the negative and why we can't do that. One of them is that it will hurt smaller gas companies and they'll shut down. And the second one, the one that I hear most, is that the companies won't come. So to that I say, one, I don't really care about the small gas companies right now. I care about West Virginians. And two, they're already here. They might not drill as 35 like they say that they will if we, keep costs low, but at least we have the few and we can combine them with the other taxes that have been mentioned before. Also, if they're not going to pay us what we deserve, then I don't want them here. Tonight, I think many people have proved that West Virginians are smart, talented, and resourceful, and we can make this state strong on our own without out-of-state and out-of-country corporations. But here's my main point, and it goes beyond any of that because I know that that's not the legislators speak, and I know that they won't probably listen to those two refutes, so I'm going to try and speak their language. A few weeks ago, I listened to the marketing director for the company Shale Crescent USA, Greg Casera, speak to a joint natural gas development/energy committee meeting. During the presentation, he spoke about his time in Japan and South Korea, talking to lots of gas developers there, and what he reported was fascinating. He reiterated that we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, which is huge on its own, but he also went into more detail. He made it very clear that our main competitor is the Gulf Coast, Texas, which their gas severance tax is 7.5%, 2.5 more than ours, that magical number. So he said that companies can save $3.6 to $11 billion by coming here instead of going to the Gulf Coast. He said that 70% of the demand for gas is within 700 miles radius of us, not there, here. He said that one South Korean man was foaming at the mouth. Those were his words, foaming at the mouth, when he saw the pictures of how much gas is in the ground right underneath of us. They don't have to ship all the way here to process it and then ship it back. They can do it all right here. So they want to be here. So why don't we shrink it? Because right now our gas is 32% cheaper than on the Gulf Coast. So for me, I feel like we should shrink that and make some money. Yep. Right now, we're charging Taco Bell prices for our Angus beef gas. Right? Right? So, why not use that money to take care of our teachers, our public employees, rather than the overseas companies? If you look at Shale Crescent USA's front page, right there, you'll see that projects here are 77% more profitable than the Gulf Coast, and that we are 100% profitable every single time, 100% profitable. A woman spoke earlier about how the gas demand is sustainable for several years, but that's it. How are we supposed to know? They actually said, the people who've done the research, who've looked at the numbers, who've looked at the gas increases and decreases, we are increasing. Our product is increasing. While Texas and the Gulf Coast, they're just staying really stagnant. So that looks good for the people who want to come here. So the 2.5 severance tax increase that's just gonna be a small little blip on their minds whenever they're thinking about drilling. I wouldn't even really be going through all of this because a lot of people talk a lot of things at these meetings. But the legislators, the one question at the end of the presentation was, do you know what policies we would need to put this in place for next year? Which is code of, what can we do to make this happen? Not that I want it to. They also said, with all that money, you can flatten the mountains, which is my favorite thing about this state. But I have a feeling it's probably going to happen to some effect. So today is a good time to talk about it. Kazera also said that things are progressing at an enormous rate because of technology, and if we don't hop on this now, we'll lose our chance for development. And so I take that as a teacher, as a public employee, that we need to act fast too. I am Olivia Morris. I'm 28 years old. I'm a teacher. I'm a West Virginian through and through. Today, it doesn't matter who I am, though. What matters is the people behind me and the people in front of their computers who can't be here today because they're working for their families, and the people who have been ignored for far too long and gone unheard. You can tell the legislators, you can tell your coworkers that if they do not raise the severance tax by 2.5%, then they can go hang out with their friend Carnes in Florida, because we... because they're not speaking for us, and we will not stop until they do. We will not stop. Thank you.
Vera Miller. Next will be Bob Cadle and Teresa Jackson.
I am Vera Miller. I am from Cabell County. I am a public school teacher there. I'm a lifelong resident of West Virginia. And I've been paying a lot of taxes in this state for a long time. And I know there are some of you sitting up there that this might be mind-blowing to you, that teachers pay taxes too. And we just don't pay income taxes. We have high gas taxes. We had food tax for a while. We have high sales tax. We have taxes on everything. West Virginia working people get paid low salaries. We can't pay any more taxes. It's about time other people started paying their taxes. And these other people, actually, most of them don't live in our state. They take from our state. So I am going to say the same thing because that several other people have said, because I know we say this and say this over and over again, but then it gets repeated. They don't tell us what they want. Well, I'm going to make sure you understand what it is that we're saying. What it is we want you to bump up the severance gas tax 7%. That's not, like the speaker before me, she did a nice job. That is not a big jump. It is still a competitive price. Business, supply and demand, we have it, they want it. They're not going anywhere. They'll pay it. Secondly, the corporate net tax. We love our local businesses, but we don't have many of them. And most of the corporate net tax breaks that have happened are from out-of-state corporations a lot of them have packed up even with these tax breaks and gone to, ironically, states with higher taxes. So saying that that's going to bring in business, well, we've proven that that doesn't work. So take it back to what it was. 9.5%, take it back to there. There is a start, and then you can find other solutions. But that gives you a lot of money there to work with. And guess what? It makes the tax more equal, so that people that are just trying to pay daily bills aren't overtaxed anymore. Because we just learned last week that now we're going to pay 11.5% more in power increases from American Electric Power. And now West Virginia American Water wants 24%. So I hope you give them that half-hour speech on how poor we are as a state when they come asking you for that increase. Thank you.
Bob Cadle, Teresa Jackson, and Mary Likert will be next.
Well, let's follow two passionate speeches with me. Okay. This is going to be fun. I've got something to hand to the committee, if I may. This is give you some information. The lady stated about the Asheville project, and that's going to be some information for you there. To give you a background of who I am, I was the former regional representative for National Association of Managed Care Regulators for Western Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and West Virginia totally, a past state chair of the Society of Financial Examiners. And like I've told the finance board of PEIA, is that I would have, as an examiner, because I did the examination of Prudential HMO, a $3 billion company, as the examiner in charge. I was the person that everybody came to do the financial information and documentation of how they're statutorily correct. I stated in front of Dale before, the fact of it is, I would have put, 10 years ago, I would have put PEIA in conservatorship because they don't know how to run a company or how to take care of their customers. And we also have something that you guys really need to take a look at, is the internal operations of PEIA versus the operational aspects of the health plan of the Upper Ohio Valley. Now, I know that's an HMO, but their operations inside, the lack of speed of getting the referrals taken care of, the problem of the lady with the child with the stroke, those things are handled quickly through their processes in the health plan. I did their examination, I know. I walked through 12,000 claims through that company in and they were taken care of in 7 days. And only a few actually went past the 7 days. On average, it was 7 days. Now, my points are, yeah, we can throw more tax dollars to PEIA, which I totally agree. Severance taxes, whatever we have to do to get it funded. But we have to take a look at the internal structure of PEIA and how they do their business. The problem with it is that we had an Omnibus Healthcare Act that had specific contractual obligations of the providers, including a 21.99% discount to the hospitals. These are all gone now. To the best of my knowledge, there's no 21.99% discount to the hospitals. And in fact, we're paying more than, like you said, we're still a little bit above Medicaid. The causes and effect of that damaged PEIA in the short term, in 2010, or 2001, excuse me, when the medical malpractice issue came up and PEIA's rate to reimburse the doctors went up, it caused a problem with PEIA's because premium didn't go up. The UCRs did. The usual and customary rate of reimbursement to the doctors went up. And that remained until Ted Cheatham, director of PEIA, in 2015, that he's finally brought those back down to the usual and customary rates that should have been done. So the doctors had, from the tort reforms in 2003, 2004 to 2015, a boon. They had more money coming into their pockets out of PEIA. That's the only place that we could that the state government could pay the doctors more because of the medical malpractice problems. There was no medical malpractice problems. The same number of doctors come in and out of the state. The same number of physicians, companies were here. The premium rates did not increase. So therefore, there was no actual, it was just to do the tort reform, which is perfectly fine, but politically, it caused PEIA to start on the down slope. Ted comes in, starts cutting benefits because he has to maintain the high reimbursement rates to the doctors, and Manchin said no premium increases. We have the monies in in like the tax department. They're self-funded primarily. There is some gaps there that are being returned that could be used in increasing the premiums to these self-funded groups. Higher education. Higher education has, in WVU, 500 people are making over $125,000 or more. Okay? When this $2,000 pay increase came around, not one of them jumped to a new tier. Everybody back here, I was reported, I found out some things, 10 to 14,000 PEI enrollees got bumped to the next tier. So the actual $2,000 pay raise may be negated or even negative in their bottom line of their own personal finances. So about what you were talking, Mike, about the out-of-pocket maximums and that kind of stuff and the tier issues, here's some of the tier issues that I see. Ted said in one of the finance boards, he said the people that are getting paid $125,000 or more were paying more than their fair share of the health care costs. Let's break it down. Under $25,000 of their gross income for paying the maximum out-of-pocket expense that they have is between 30 and 35% of their gross income. That's $25,000 and below. I've got the numbers. I can share it with the staff, and I will do it on your all's line. 125 and above, 125 is 8%. 150, roughly where Ted's at, is 6%. And it goes up to even Gordon Gee, the president of WVU, is paying 2% of his gross income. Okay? That's the issues we have. Pay that you can pay. Let's make sure that they're paying what they can pay. Their fair share. That's all we're asking. My recommendation on that, because I do have some background in setting rates and that kind of thing, is that set the rates where it's 10% across the board or something of that nature. These people that are making $25,000, they'll hit their out-of-pocket maximum mid-year. Out-of-pocket maximum will be, say $25,000, that's $12,500 is their gross income. That's not without taxes. This could be $6,000 out of their pocket or more. This is what the problem is that half their income for 6 months is gone. Takes me to the last point that I want to make. And this is to the lady with the face-to-face issue. Asheville Project. I'd like for everybody to have a copy of that. There's 20 copies there. You should have one. These cuts of the face-to-face program alone, as of June 30th, will cost, get this, will cost PEIA $1.5 to $2.6 million the very first year that it is dropped. There is 170,000 people in the face-to-face program, 130 of them going to graduate this June. That cost is going to inflate to PEIA because there's other things involved. The person that was in charge of the Asheville project stated very clearly just last year the idea that people could be incentivized to manage chronic health care conditions, they would be healthier and the city's costs would be much lower. This is from their risk manager of that time frame, okay? For example, glucose testing supplies and a few $1,000s a year. But costs of limb amputation, strokes, renal failure, or blindness, all complications of diabetes can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm just talking regular medical care for the 1.5 to 2.6, not major medical, okay? This is going to drive more people to the hospitals because of this issue. That first year when they did the diabetes, they shown a 32% decrease in their less on people with diabetes in the very first year. They increased it to other issues, and they increased cardiovascular conditions, high blood pressure, cholesterol, and their care dropped 51% cost. This is the primary thing I want you guys to understand about the face-to-face program. He stated in the first 14 years of the Asheville project, not one employee, and I'm reading this verbatim from his own statements, not one employee had to go on dialysis because of diabetic kidney failure. Not one person. If you take this program away and take other programs that the lady started talking about, the health and well-being of the employees, the hospital cost goes up. They stated their hospital costs went down when they implemented this. Our hospital costs will go up. The cost factors will be reversed in what we've been improving on our health, and that is not acceptable because we're looking at $3 million, my calculations and stuff, roughly $3 million just in the average cost to take care of diabetics or cardiovascular disease or any other diseases. You're going to multiply that cost. So very simply put, let's get the premiums where it's equitable across all pays. Maybe even take a look at the higher education as a separate entity and look at their utilization. They have no incentive of not overutilizing the system and costing PEIA more money. You have to take a look at each group with the ability to go to the doctor because they don't have to worry about it. 2%, 4%, 8% of their total gross salary is nothing. Once they hit that, they can just continue on going to the doctors, and that's another thing that PEIA has failed to do. Health Plan of the Upper Ohio Valley does look at utilization in groups. They will take a look at the groups, and they will sit down and talk to them and make sure. They have outreach programs to different groups. Take a look at that, how they work within their structures. They are working for their customers. PEIA hasn't been doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Teresa Jackson, followed by Mary Eckert, and then Julia Frederick Curry. Teresa? Several.
Hi, how are you guys doing? I'm a teacher, and so based on the looks I'm seeing on your faces and a lot of the faces I see out here, I think we need a quick stretch break. So let's just take a second. Let's get up out of our chairs. Let's take a stretch break. We all need it.
You're my favorite speaker.
Just saying.
Really?
All right. If you could take your seats, I would appreciate it. Hi, my name is Teresa Jackson. I'm a teacher in Cabell County, and I live in Putnam County. I had a bunch of things I was going to say this evening, but I'm going to try and keep it really short and to the point. One thing that I have noticed going to these hearings, listening to people talk, and kind of listening to the responses that we tend to get back, is that it seems like the state looks at the cost of PEIA as if it is optional. This expense cannot be viewed this way. These are benefits that people rely on, and they are benefits that the state has committed to support. They are not an additional thing that we get that's extra or special. It is just a part of the job that we do. I've listened to the other voices here today, and I struggle to understand why the legislature did not work harder to solve this problem before we got to this point. I also worry that this task force is going to come out with an excellent short-term solution, and we will be right back here 5 years from now, 2 years from now. I had a brilliant list of suggestions, but I feel that many other people have put them wonderfully and have brought papers that I would be proud of to get as a teacher. I'm just going to say, if I could get that kind of work out of my students, I would be really proud. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to repeat any of those. I know for sure that we should not have to struggle and beg to have our benefits funded every year like we have been. I know that we need to take care of all of us who are working in West Virginia in various places, whether we are teachers and a part of the public education system or we're working for the state. Those are people who live here, who have committed their lives to being in West Virginia, and we need to start putting them first. We, as teachers, as others, as a group, have come together, and we need you to understand that we are going to demand answers. We are going to demand that this be funded, and we are going to demand the support of the legislature in order to get a fix for this by October. We will not wait. We demand the respect that we have been owed and sadly not given. And for the rest of you, another thing that we can do to help solve this problem, I've got a teacher voice, it's fine. Another thing that we can do is support candidates for our legislature who understand these issues and who are coming from a place that we come from. By the way, my name is Teresa Jackson. I'm running for the West Virginia House of Delegates. And if elected, I will continue to teach all year up until the legislative session, and then I will do that, and then I will go right back to my classroom, because that's where I would rather be.
Mary? I'm having difficulty in reading it. Mary Likert? Okay. Julia? After Julia will be Heidi Talmadge.
Hi, I'm Juliana Frederick Curry. I'm with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. Thank you for giving me a couple minutes to speak. I'll keep this brief. I'm just here on behalf of the Coalition for Tobacco-Free West Virginia, and as you're looking for funding sources for PIA, we wanted to encourage you to consider a significant tobacco tax increase. As West Virginia continues to lead the country with adult tobacco usage, youth tobacco usage, and also pregnant women that smoke, we feel that this would be not only a health benefit, but could provide a revenue resource for you all as you're looking for ways to solve this issue. So I brought some projections and some data to share with you, and just hope that it's something that you will consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Heidi is next. After Heidi is Jacob Verdage.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Heidi Talmadge, and I'm a state employee. I've been with the state for about 20 years, and I am speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of my employer. I recognize from a lot of the things that have been said here, there are a lot of difficult problems that need to be resolved, and I just wanted to emphasize how important it is to push past the initial barriers that you've mentioned. As somebody who's been in state government for a long time, I can see from many perspectives that things are extremely difficult. But if you look at the long-term frustration that you're dealing with, it's very important to come to a solution that satisfies people, even if it's not perfect. And one of the things that you've mentioned, you've indicated, praised PIA for having a big buying power, but as some of the other speakers have mentioned, if you could partner with other states, then you'd have even a bigger buying power because you are a even larger group. West Virginia is a very small state, but if you work through the purchasing process, it's extremely difficult to develop any kind of joint cooperation with other states, things like that. And that's just an example. Another type of thing that you need to look at is you've got something that somebody mentioned earlier, there's conflicts with these contractors that we hire to limit our prices. The Caremark was one of the other speakers mentioned how they had a conflict and was spending a lot of money in Kentucky. There was a 60 Minutes article a couple weeks ago about how our previous contractor had a huge conflict in when they were doing the same kind of work for Rockford, Illinois. Huge expense being spent on a contractor that's supposed to be saving us money, but in the end they had a conflict of interest in keeping the prices high on prescription drugs. Things that may be difficult to get to with the, there's not always a sensation that government is open, even if a person or you or somebody else like that feels like you are listening. The fact that your predecessor didn't listen is something that was remembered by the person that's been a government employee for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So keep in mind that if you don't keep the communications open and give an opportunity for suggestions on a routine basis, that's how you end up with the type of situation that you got back in February where the tempers boiled over. If you can let the steam out some more on a regular basis, let people give suggestions, make them feel like those suggestions are being heard on a more regular basis, then you don't end up with as much of a, volatile situation as what you got. And that's going to keep it short. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Jacob Ferdig, followed by Krista Artis and April Estep.
Thank you, folks. I do want to start off by saying she had mentioned that if we had more of these hearings that would help because people let steam off. For 3 years leading up to the strike, I gave the same remarks I'm about to give at every PEIA hearing, and nobody did anything. So, I teach at Riverside High School in Kanawha County. I've been teaching for 6 years now. I have a wife with a chronic illness. I have 2 children, aged 3 and 2. My eldest daughter was born with a physical handicap. I also qualify for food stamps and WIC and have collected on those when my children were younger. I grew up, Mr. Carmichael, you'll respect this, 2 conservative Republican parents in your district. It's where I grew up at. I'm not somebody that's anti-Republican, okay? I vote third party, so my vote doesn't matter to you, but it's fair. But I'm also keenly aware that the situation we're in has been a joint effort. It is not a situation where I've been clear from the beginning of the strike. We can't just point at Republicans and say they've done this. It's true that I believe that Republicans are part of the reason we're still here right now, but it's been Democrats for 30 years that have let this program get where it's at. I'll give you a remark on that very quickly. About 11 years ago, I did an interview with the late Ken Heckler and talked to him a little bit about being involved in West Virginia politics. And one of the questions I had for him was, not being from West Virginia, what really made him realize there was an issue here. And he said the first time he visited the legislature in West Virginia, which of course at the time was occupied almost entirely by Democrats, he said that he went in, and whenever they would ask for a vote, that literally the House of Delegates or the Senate would look up and look for this or this from representatives from the coal companies as to how to vote. And so he realized then that that was an issue. So what I'm saying is I would be the sort of person that would be happy to vote for anybody that would fix my problems, okay? That's just the way I feel about it. So the qualifying for WIC and food stamps for me is an issue because I have a college degree and I'm working in a job where I qualify for WIC and food stamps. I mean, it's just clear. To me, the starting salary for educators should at least be where that line is. I mean, that's it. And it's the same for our service personnel. We have service personnel that make like $11.50 an hour, bus drivers. And in Kanawha County, we have a major issue finding bus drivers because who wants to do, I'll tell you right now, at the pay that I make as a fully certified teacher, I would not do a bus driver's job. Okay, I wouldn't. Like, I'll tell you, I just wouldn't do that. It's a job that is a thankless task, but is absolutely necessary. So despite the pay raises that we got, my pay is still essentially stagnated, right? And so what I'm looking at is after this freeze is over, the cost of my benefits are going to go up one way or another. It's just going to happen. But my pay is still going to be here. We've not adjusted the pay system to adjust for whatever that would be. So my concern there, of course, is the cost. It's preventatively expensive. I had the same issue as one of these women that spoke about, like I had my daughter needed to go to Cleveland Clinic. My wife has had to go to Cleveland Clinic. In my wife's case, she was on her father's insurance, and he's a PEI, he's on PEI, and so that's when we were younger, and they were refusing to cover it, so he just paid it out of pocket because which he couldn't afford to do, but it's like, she needs this, so, you have to get it taken care of. But at one point, I know this is an unpopular standpoint for a lot of politicians, but at one point it was believed, I think, whenever they did PEI, that there was a social contract between the people of this state and the servants of this state, right? And so the idea was that the pay is never going to be great. Nobody in here expects great pay, but the benefits are going to be top-notch, right? So the idea is if I spend my entire life serving the children in my community, that my community is going to take care of me when I need it. They're going to pay for my insurance. I'm going to have good retirement. And so all that's deteriorated, Those are the sorts of things that I look at whenever I look at this issue. It's a big issue, and I agree with the idea that the cost, how to pay for that is not my problem. My problem is, 30 students, 7 periods a day, teaching them art. That's my job. That's what I get paid to do. So I pay taxes so that people solve the other problems, for me and represent me in that. So for me, where that comes from is it's no consequence to me. I have my druthers on it, but it really doesn't matter as long as it's paid for. But in this time, though, that I've been involved with this strike and before, but during the strike, I had legislators that said that I'm lazy. We're just lazy. We're just bumming around, despite me working multiple jobs. I've had, during the strike, I was on national news a couple of times. I had a lot of feedback from people locally. Most of it was positive. But during the strike, I had threats on my well-being and my life. I moved my family to my parents' house for a short time. I had threats on my job. I had, which I must say going into, I fully expected. Like, none of this was a surprise to me. After the strike, I had a member of the Kanawha County Republican Executive Committee file a West Virginia Freedom of Information Act against me for information related to the strike or a Meet Your Muslim Day that was in Charleston. Now, this is all despite the fact that I sponsored the Young Republicans at my school for 2 years, not being a Republican, but because I had students that were interested in being Republicans and did the best I could to facilitate that. Thank you. I was called a pro-Muslim socialist anarchist. I was attacked on social media. These same people went after me. These are people that represent your party, Mr. Carmichael. These are people, it's not you, but these are people that represent your party in my district that have directly attacked me. And my hands are tied. My hands are tied because they're parents of students I have, great students, but it's just these are issues that you have, so what am I supposed to do? So that's going on with this fight for health insurance is vital to me, so much so that that's no consequence. It's no consequence that these things happen. But, the idea that I have to move my family somewhere for safety is a problem. It's a problem for me. The remark was made earlier about that's the law, that you made the comment at the beginning that it's the law, that there has to be the fair employees cover the part, what's the term you used? Don't make me look it up. The ability to pay?
No, that's in the law.
Right, right. The great thing about a constitutional republic is we can change the law however we want.
You can.
You're right. Well, and so the argument on any of this that it's the law is a cop-out. We can fix anything we want. You know, politicians can make it so corporations are
But
people.
it's currently the law.
Right.
They've just followed the law. I don't disagree with you that law should be changed.
Right.
But I made the point that the tiering is there because of the law.
Well, what the task force is here for is to form a plan.
Yeah.
So
That's
part,
correct,
if
and
the-
that's something
right.
we would probably
So
like to
if
address.
part of that plan was that, and I'm not saying that the law needs to be removed entirely. I don't know enough about it. You know, you have people that research that. But what I'm saying is that the idea that it's the law is always a cop-out for politicians to say, because you can change the law. We can change any, corporations are people because of law. We've removed the requirement for foreign meats coming into the country to be labeled in their country of origin because of the law. You know, we can change these things however we want. So I think that's all that I have. Yes, and the reason I say that I'm not anti-Republican on this is my estimates during the strike were that about a third of the people involved with the strike that I talked to are Republicans. Not just Republicans, ardent Republicans, you know, dyed-in-the-wool, Trump-supporting Republicans, you know. These are not evil people. I don't believe this. You know, I just believe my parents are an example. I love my parents. I respect their opinion greatly. But what I'm saying is, for me, it's not an issue of attacking a party. I just want it to be fixed, and I don't care who does it or how it's done. You know, 4 years ago, when I first started on this issue with PEIA, I made a decision that I can't deal with all these different political issues that we have going on in the world, but I can choose one topic, and PEIA has been my one topic for 4 years. So it's not, to me, it's not a partisan issue. Both parties could come together right now and say, listen, we're going to fund the heck out of this thing, have the best insurance, you know, in the country. It's over with. So that's all.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Krista Artis, and I'm going to ask if you all could be concise. We've got a lot of other people that want to talk yet. We've got more than 15 people that want to speak, and we want to give everybody a chance. And I know it's getting a little late, and you're going to be in your classrooms tomorrow or in work tomorrow. And again, I want everybody to have a chance to speak. So if you could be concise, that would be greatly appreciated. Krista, April is next, and then Brianne Solomon.
Hi. First, can I ask everybody a question? How many of you are still in school? How many of you are not? Kanawha County Schools got out today for teachers. We have all night. Before I start, my name is Krista Antis, by the way. Sorry. My N's sometimes look like R's. I have some pictures I'd like to pass down the line, if that's all right. And let me just briefly explain these. These are pictures of a patient of PEIA. This is my son. His name is Davis. He will be 7 on Saturday. He is the happiest kid on the planet, but he has some significant challenges. Like Jake said, his wife has a chronic illness. Davis has a chronic illness. He has a genetic condition, which is a variation of the KARS gene, K-A-R-S, on chromosome 16. I have to write that down because I have trouble remembering it. What that means is he's got a major developmental delays. He's in a wheelchair. He can't walk. He can't hold his head up on his own. He can't talk. He can eat very little by mouth. And I am a single mom. His dad is dead. So it is me and him against the world. And he, as you can see by those pictures, he is all in. He also has seizures. When he gets sick, he gets very sick. 26 hospitalizations, inpatient. So I'm relatively healthy. And I say relatively because I have my own issues, but compared to him, they're nothing. What happens if I get sick? How is my insurance going to cover my illnesses? Because we've seen a decline in the quality of our coverage over the last several years. And while I do have family close, I don't have family that knows his level of care nearly as well as I do. They're willing to learn, and they have learned. But if something were to happen to me, if I'm hospitalized, I'm worried for his safety. I'm going to try not to reiterate a lot of the points that have already been made because, for example, I think Jay and Olivia both did a much better job than I would have on revenue streams. But I will say this, on the corporate net income tax, there are 23 states that have higher tax rates than we do on their corporate net income. And I seriously doubt that those states, or most of them, not all of them, most of them do not have the same amount of natural resources that these companies want to extract from West Virginia. And we need to take care of West Virginians first, long before we take care of these out-of-state, out-of-country corporations. If they want to drill here, they need to pay us for our gas and oil. As Jake said, school and public employees, we don't have high pay, even with the 5% raise that was passed. Our pay is still not going to be high. I don't teach 8th grade English for the pay. Trust me, 170 hormonal teenagers, my salary doesn't make that worth it. But I love them, and that's what makes it worth it. PEIA is supposed to make up for that low pay. Our awesome insurance coverage and benefits are supposed to make up for the fact that we aren't close to the national average for the pay for public employees. And so I want to thank you all for your time. I know this has probably been very difficult over the last few months, considering this is your 21st meeting, and we all have a lot to say. But it's time for our state government to put West Virginians first and protect families like mine and like everybody else's behind me. And if we don't see results, if we don't see the results we're looking for, I really hope that our legislators, besides Senator Carmichael, because we know he's watching, and Senator Beach and Delegate Hanshaw, and I'm not sure who else I'm missing up there, but I really hope they're watching, because if we don't see those results, we will remember in November.
Thank you, Krista. April Eastup, Brianne Solomon.
I also have a picture if somebody wants to grab this. My name is April Eastup. I'm an English teacher at Sherman High School in Boone County. What's going down now is a picture of my 4 kids. I'm also a single parent. They're students in Boone County schools. I'm a big fan of public education. They're being publicly educated. They have pretty good teachers. What I've done on this picture that's going around is I wrote like all of their health issues at the top. Out of the 3, I have one that's very healthy. Very excited about that. And I really can't say anything that hasn't already been said. Everyone's been very well spoken. They've made all the points about we need funding for this, and you could raise this tax, or you could do this, or you could do that. And all I can really say is that I need you to fix it. I have sat in a drive-thru to get a prescription for my daughter, and I couldn't afford it. It's a daughter that has asthma, and it wasn't that expensive. I apologize for crying, but I cry. I'm a crier. It's gonna be like $86, and I couldn't pay it. Do any of you, and I want to show hands, do you guys know what that's like? Do you guys? Thank you. Thank you. To have a college degree. Thank you. To have a degree. To be a teacher in West Virginia for almost 20 years. And to not be able to get a prescription at a pharmacy for a child that needs it is heartbreaking. And it's embarrassing. I have my younger son, his name is Joey. He is on the autism spectrum. He has ADHD, he has Tourette's, he has issues with his heart that has to be monitored a couple times a year. He has to wear like little Holter monitor. I mean, he just has a bunch of issues. He requires a bunch of prescriptions. He requires a bunch of specialists. Specialist visits at $40 a pop. It may not seem like much, but when there are multiple prescriptions, multiple specialists, I mean, it adds up. His pediatrician is excellent. I love her, and she does everything that she can to meet his needs, because that's a $20 prescription, and I can do a $20 prescription. Can't do 40. I can't do 40 every 2 months to get the medication that he needs, because it's $40 for the specialist to get his prescription. Then it's another, depending on if I've met my deductible or not, it's another $100 at the pharmacy. I need you to fix this. Those kids need you to fix this. And I brought that picture not because I think my kids are really cute, but they are. First of all, they're really adorable, and they're excellent people, and they're very smart. And they're going to do great things in the future. Maybe not in West Virginia because our economy's not great. But I want you to see their faces, and I want you to remember their faces, because if this isn't fixed, you are hurting them. If the legislature doesn't act on whatever you propose and it doesn't fix this problem, you are hurting my children. You're hurting their children. You're hurting them, and you're hurting me. I've even talked about my medical issues. I have 2 brain aneurysms that have been coiled and stented and have to be monitored every 2 years. If something would happen and there'd be a leak, there would be a rupture, what happens to me? What happens to them? But again, I'm not concerned about me right now. I'm not concerned about my insurance. I want it fixed for them, because they deserve to be able to get the health care that they need. So do I. So do they. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, April. Brianne Solomon is next, followed by Lance Wheeler.
Good evening. I'll try to make this brief. I know we've been here forever. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have a unique perspective in that I was at one of the very first PEI hearings in Point Pleasant, and I spoke there as well. I have notes of what each member who chose to speak, said they were going to look at, but I'll get to that in just a sec. I have ADD. That's a disclaimer from the get-go. It's not officially diagnosed, but it's accurate. So I'm going to skip around. The fact that we opened up talking about tiers of pay, and Mr. Hall said, we've got the majority in the $20,000 to $30,000 a year range. They're in the crunch area. And it kind of went by me, up 20 to 30, and I had to grab it before I missed the point. The majority of our payers, our active participants, are $20,000 to $30,000 a year. If you check the federal poverty level, which I Googled while sitting here, that weaves in and out of that level based on how many people are in your household. How is this okay that the majority of our active participants weave in and out of federal poverty level? That is a fundamental fix, and I know there are lawmakers sitting at this table, and I'm urging you to fix it. It's not acceptable. And the other part that's bad is I went, whew, glad I'm not in that level. That is horrible. But I know that that's a carnal thing we do because none of us are paid enough. But that's beside the point. I'm sorry. We had a rally out there, and it was just jumping and hopping, and I noticed that some of you all didn't attend. So I wanted to let you in on a few key points that were made. We're going to ask you what your next steps are, and we expect it relatively quickly. You've been listening to us, we hope, since February. You've been listening at panels since May 2nd when I saw some of you in Point Pleasant. I hope you weren't simply listening, okay? Because we want to know what the next steps are. And while I know you're not prepared to answer that tonight, we had some suggestions from lawmakers that are running for office, which, by the way, I am running in District 14, House of Delegates. Tally Sergeant, I'm sorry, what? Breanne Solomon, all O's, just like in the Bible. Tally Sergeant recommended that we call a special session in August, right when the teachers come back, so you don't think that you forgot about us, as maybe a good faith preemptive measure to avoid what I could only call work stoppage 2.0, which if you don't think we're talking about it, we're talking about it. Labor is alive and well in West Virginia. Labor unions are alive and well. I know there was national pressure to crush the union, but you didn't. So, next. If August is too soon, because I get it, I understand. I want my summer break too. Ojeda offered a timeline of October 1st. That seems more than adequate. Can you advise us as to when you can have your recommendations made public to the powers that be? That's my next question. You've heard all the suggestions of how we can find the money. We're all smart people. We can find the money. It's just, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to serve your people, or are you willing to serve corporations and big pharma? And that's what you have to go home and look in the mirror and ask yourself. You need to have a come to Jesus with yourself, and you need to see. Now, very quickly and expeditiously, I promise you, Miss Matheny, very quickly, I'm going to go down some of the key points because I'm a teacher and I take excellent notes from the May 2nd meeting. Mike Hall, you said that PEA outsources to several corporations but is not for profit per se. It allocates enough money to put into reserve toward claims, and the optimal percentage is 14% of earned monies. Okay, coverage is decided within the board, not from independently outsourced corporations. You encouraged everyone to take a look at the presentation on the PEIA Task Force website, and if you haven't, guys, take a look. It was informative. On the table, there's a proposal for tiered taxing on gas severance. I just want everyone to know what was discussed May 2nd, and I hope you continue to keep that dialogue. You did advise that cost of living adjustments, or COLA, must be considered. You talked about revenue streams and looking into formulating border county medical plans in the future. You also stressed the importance of using many facets to generate money for PEIA, not just one, and that was great. Dale Lee, you only had 3 points. Yes, we must revisit COLA for retirees. Rising costs for prescriptions need specific looks, and they need looks by doctors, not y'all. Eliminating options from potentials for care should be examined. And Mitch Carmichael, you didn't talk much that night, but you did poll the audience wondering about the viability of the issue of legalizing cannabis. It was overwhelmingly supported. You backed up and stated a caveat. You clarified, okay, not just for medical, but what about if it was also recreational? To which, while it wasn't every single person, it was overwhelmingly supported. I just want everyone to know that up in what many people consider a very conservative area of the state, which is Point Pleasant, West Virginia, it was overwhelmingly supported. It needs visited. In the end, you thanked us and said that you appreciate us being guinea pigs and that you were now aware that you needed to bring sources and figures, which you seem to have done. I guess the overarching theme I want to take away from this is, what is next? Thank you.
Thank you. Lance Wheeler, followed by Laura Lee Modisett.
Well, thank you all. And I will have to say, when I walked in, I just wanted to ask a simple question. And I saw two lines, one much shorter than the other. And I thought I was going to outsmart everyone by getting in here quicker. I should have known better than to think I can outsmart a bunch of teachers.
That's right.
I do thank you all for having this so we can have a debate and discussion. I'm not a teacher myself, but I do work in the business of billing insurance. I'm in medical sales equipment. I provide equipment for those who are in need. And so I constantly run into seeing patients who have either PEIA as a primary or even as a secondary. And I've stood in skilled nursing facilities expressing the copay and the deductibles and the out-of-pockets with patients who are in need of equipment that would help them in their ADLs, assisted daily living, outside of the facility. And I've seen the damage and the costs that we can see with prior authorization. Now, prior authorization will save money, and I myself do believe we need to save money, but there is an expense sometimes because we broadly express what prior authorization means. And by that, I'll give you an anecdotal story of a patient who's at a skilled nursing facility and is cut by their insurance, PIA, last minute. At that point, physical therapy comes in and says, well, that patient needs a wheelchair, young or old, it could be anyone. That wheelchair needs a prior authorization. That wheelchair does not get that prior authorization before they are cut from the skilled nursing facility. That patient has two options: private pay at a skilled nursing facility for $600 a day and wait for that prior authorization to come into my hand so I can provide that equipment, or go home without that equipment. What happens is that patient goes home and they re-injure themselves and they're back in the ER. Something we in the healthcare facilities understand is the worst case scenario, and that's why urgent cares have came into existence. I tell this story because it's a real story. I've experienced it. Or the patient with PIA at a Friday night, slipping, falling, breaking their L11 and L12 vertebrae, going into the ER, needing a back brace to help not only with immobilizing that spine, but also to prevent pain that they will extrudate go through. And because there's after $500, a prior authorization, they stay there for 2 days, they come out, they don't have that back brace, and because of the pain that they're in, they go right back into the ER. More expenses coming onto PIA. So it is one thing for a bunch of administrators to sit at a table and say, broad prior authorization will help us save money, but it's another thing to actually look at the numbers and seeing where we're actually saving the money and where we're actually losing more money. If you do keep prior authorization, an advice that I have to speeding up the process is something that other insurances are actually doing, is electronically prior authorization. Today, we have to fill out a form signed by the doctor and fax it. Ladies and gentlemen, only the people in the healthcare facilities are actually using fax machines today. They're outdated, and it's time that we move on. One other suggestion I will say real quick is advancing with technology, like I just previously said. One thing we've been seeing in other states is patients are actually being seen face-to-face with their doctor or nurse practitioner over digital means, and Skype or any other type of services. And this will actually help with the brick-and-mortar reimbursement rates that we have for PCPs, because not every patient needs to go and see their PCP face-to-face, literally. They can see them over a digital monitor and ask and answer questions and see if it's necessary for them to come in from that point. And you can offer those at a much lower rate because there's not the expense to a physician in a PCP. So we need to look into measures like that, and I think there are many more. I'm just one small guy who has lots of ideas, but you have better ideas, I'm sure, that we can do to save money and to save costs and to provide a better health care to these fine people out here. However, I will state that the short-sighted answer is raising taxes in our state, as soon as some have stated. Higher taxes leads to less jobs leads to less money for education later in the years, Increasing taxes is kicking the can down the road. Any additional money that is used to fund PEIA should be found by cutting government, not taxing the citizens more. I asked this committee to look at policy changes before shifting the burden on taxpayers. Everyone is for raising taxes until it personally affects you. Taxing gas and big business, as we all like to say and hear, will have unintended consequences of affecting all of West Virginia and its citizens. So please, when you look at the different measures that we can do, look internally of how we can make it more cost-saving for PEIA and better health care for these fine folks, and not just shifting that burden onto the taxpayers. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you. Laura Lee Modisett.
Good evening. I am a Doddridge County High School teacher. I taught for, this is my 15th year. I'm a social studies teacher, and I was invited to come tonight and share my story. I shared it last week in Doddridge County at the high school. And my story starts like this. I made 11 trips to Charleston. This is my 12th, if you want to count. I went to the PEIA hearing in Morgantown well before the work stoppage happened. I contacted my legislators by email, by phone. My kids, funny enough, I use hands-free calling. They pretty much got to know Senator Maroney's voice and Senator Clements, because those are my representatives, in the car as we went along. Oh, Mommy, is that Senator Mike Maroney? Yes, it is. Anyways, so I did all that I could do before the work stoppage, and I wanted to be able to lay my head down at night and know that when I walked out of my classroom, I had done everything I could to prevent that from happening. But when I was in Charleston and when I was on the phone and email after email, the one thing that stood out to me is the only way I could ever get anybody to pay attention to me is if I use the words fiscal responsibility. If we're fiscally responsible, then I could get people to listen to me. If I didn't use those words, if I didn't claim that I was thinking about the fiscal responsibility of those in the state and in the legislation, then they just dismissed me. Oh, what's she talking about? So I started to think, if they want us to be fiscally responsible and we need to find a solution to this problem, what are some of the answers? Well, in where I live, in Doddridge County, many of you may not know. Maybe you knew us because we win all kinds of track championships or cross country. Maybe that's the only reason you knew us, but in the last 5 to 7 years, oil and gas has really taken over. And, I'm not going to talk about the negative side of that. There are negative sides to oil and gas and the way it tears up your roads, and there's people from out of the area in our counties and that kind of thing. But there's been a lot of positive things that come from oil and gas. Doddridge County schools have a wider tax base that's providing many opportunities for our students. And we, actually didn't receive any state funding this year because our schools were really blessed. And the people in our county have, been blessed by that. And so I don't want to be unfair to those companies because they really are giving to those in our county. But at the same time, I know that we have wet gas, and wet gas is very valuable. And I feel like our state is comparing themselves to other states which mainly have dry gas. And the tax is different on that, and we have something that's way more valuable than these other states have. So I just beg you to look at that differently. No, I don't want to punish them. So yes, I am in favor of a gas severance tax. I am. But I also am in favor of rewarding those companies that keep the gas here. We can have, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an oil and gas expert, but when I went to that first PEI hearing in Morgantown before the work stoppage, I listened to a gentleman from Harrison County talk, and his name was Mr. McElroy, and he was very smart, and I don't know if he's here tonight. If he's here tonight, I would love to meet him. I did get his contact at the last meeting. I haven't been able to talk to him in depth, but I would, more than me talk to him, I want you to talk to him. Mr. McElroy, I think his name's Steve McElroy, and again, Harrison County. And I just listened to what he had to say at that Morgantown meeting. And one of the things that he said was, let's raise the tax on these oil and gas companies. Like, let's raise it really high, but if they keep it here, and we have a byproduct that's created from, like 9 byproducts can be created from wet gas, well, let's create other jobs. I know in Parkersburg, we're down to like 1 plant on the right there in Parkersburg. Now, Marietta still has a few, but there was the talk of the cracker plants coming. Well, that's kind of wavering, and I guess that's because we couldn't get people, clients and customers to promise that they would, you know, buy into the product or whatever. And I guess it's the client base that was keeping some of those companies from creating these other plants. And again, I don't know. But what if we gave them a huge rebate? Give them a huge rebate to keep that oil and gas here and keep that plants here. Increase our tax base. Increase it by increasing the jobs that are here. And no, I don't know all there is to know about it, but I guarantee you Steve McElroy would know. And I'm just really impressed by the homework he did on that. And so I just beg you, and no, I don't want to be rude to those oil and gas companies because they've provided wealth for my community. But at the same time, I also have seen, not just coal, because in Doddridge County, we're not a coal county. We were a timber county. And I guess, you know, in the past, whenever oil and gas is high, you know, your timber drops off, and whenever timber is high, oil and gas kind of drops off. It's in a rotation historically. But our timber went out of state, and we sent a lot of our timber to North Carolina, and they manufactured it into furniture. We could have manufactured furniture, and we could be selling that furniture from our own timber. Just like with oil and gas, we could be doing that. So no, I don't want to be rude and disrespectful to those companies because they are providing for our state, but I want them to be held accountable, and I want them to also provide a fix for our problem here. The other thing is I'm married to a police officer who also has PEIA insurance, and you know, we don't really have a choice. He is covered by our county, which is reaping the benefits of oil and gas, so our tax base is better, and the county is treating him better, the deputies. His is covered 100%. Mine is not. The county is real, you know, again, we're really blessed because our tax base is increased. But how can we, you know, as public servants, you know, I said at the meeting before, my husband has a degree in business administration and journalism. We won't talk about how he became a police officer and how we're still paying on those student loans. But anyways, and I have student loans as well, but I was fiscally responsible. I didn't take out extra loans. I had $5,000 or less in my undergraduate. It was my master's degree that cost me $15,000. And who asked me to get the master's degree? My state. They pushed me to be educated. And the reason I got that is because I wanted to do that. I wanted to better myself and better myself for my students and for my family. But I will be paying $165 a month until I'm 47. I've never deferred my loans. I don't pay more on them than I do other things because the interest rate is lower. I'm lucky there. But just thinking about being fiscally responsible, I did that to be here. And then in the last legislation, I heard that they possibly were going to start hiring teachers who didn't even need a teaching degree. Like, that just totally breaks my heart because I'm going to be paying $165 a month for the next 10 years. I still have, you know, more years to pay. And now I'm even sadder to find out when you told the tiers, I hadn't really looked at that. I'm going to be in the next tier because of the raise. So that's going to affect my family negatively again, even though I got the raise. Just like when I got my master's degree, I got bumped up in the tax bracket and I paid more. So far, what the state has done to me, okay, I also forgot my retirement. I had to buy back into it. It took me several years to get into the new old plan. So, you know, whether that was dumb or not, I was a young teacher. I didn't know what I was doing. I needed guidance in that. You know, with this Go 365 that rolled out, my husband being a police officer, me being a teacher, we were actually ignorant enough to be excited about it. He and I had a little friendly competition going on who could get the most points. And then we realized they're going to punish us. This year I need 3,000 points, but the next year I need 5,000 points, and the next year I need 8,000 points. Within 3 years, it didn't matter how healthy we were or not, we were going to be punished. And so I love the idea of the lady earlier that was pointing out, making that a positive incentive. I will do it. I definitely could lose some weight. You know, we could definitely be more physically fit, but don't punish us for that. So again, no, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm thankful that you're sitting here and willing to listen. I tried to do everything I could to keep from having a work stoppage. I don't want to do that again. But now it's boiled down to what's best for my family. And here's the thing I said the other night, I would make a wonderful secretary. I mean, I've got great skills. Clerical, I can type, I'm organized, I'm educated, I can talk on the phone, I can handle people yelling at me all day long. I'm a high school teacher. So if we can't fix the insurance, maybe I need to work for an oil and gas company as a secretary, because that's where I feel like I'm headed. And those oil and gas companies, they're doing pretty good right now. And I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, on Route 50 right now, there are billions of dollars put into these companies. So I just beg you to look at the byproducts and the potential that we have for that. Reward companies to stay here. Increase our tax base. And thank you again for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura Lee. Joe Frost. Can you read that writing there? Is it Zanetta? Is there a Zanetta? Oh, thank you. What a pretty name. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Joe Frost, and I wanted to say thank you all for being here. I'm from Raleigh County. I teach at Shady Spring High School, and I teach math. So thankfully, this won't be all about math this evening. I heard just the last part of the board's report that you don't know your projected costs. And the other thing that I heard, which was implied more than said, was that you seem to feel trapped and that your hands are tied, that you're trapped with costs and expenses. And I am really uncomfortable with that. I think that our negotiating ability is much stronger than for you guys to sit up there and tell us that you somehow feel trapped and you can't negotiate our costs down. And maybe you haven't explored all of those options yet. But you do. You have negotiating power. We are a guaranteed consumer base. We're a guaranteed customer, and we are not happy customers. Many of you on the board have PEIA healthcare, and I bet you are not happy customers either. Your hands are not tied. You are not victims of medical inflation. We can negotiate these costs down because we are a guaranteed consumer base. So, one of the things that we need to examine and think about is how medical inflation affects us as teachers. Most of our pay scale is very close to where it was in 2008 when we consider real dollars. Medical inflation, of course, has risen much faster than our pay scale. I face the same thing. I have one son in college and one son getting ready to go to college, and they face the same kind of education inflation at the higher education level. We've had a decade of economic and medical inflation with no match for our teachers. So even though our pay in real dollars has stagnated or gone down, we are paying more and more every day medically. And it stops. Where can this stop? It stops with us. We are creative, we are strong, we are empowered, and we are better than this. And I feel so strongly about this. I'm sorry. West Virginia is better than this. We have programs in place already. We have 4-H. We have healthcare programs in 4-H. We have ways to teach our children how to cook and how to eat better, and our children can teach us how to cook better. Our HISTA kids learn how to make black bean brownies at camp. They can teach us. Now, not everybody is a fan, but They'll teach you how to make a kale chip too, let me tell you. So, we can do more with what we have. We have a healthy eating program in place already in West Virginia. We have exercise programs in place that I have taken advantage of through Healthy Tomorrows. And it was a wonderful, wonderful program. And if I hadn't gotten sick during that program, then I probably would still be working out every day. So, what about another thing that occurred to me while we're sitting here listening to my colleagues? What about discounts on Healthy Lifestyles apps? We have students who can create apps. I'm a master gardener. One of my students created an app to look at how to grow grass in West Virginia, and I mean the golf kind. So, we can do this. Our students are creative. West Virginians are creatives. We can use our resources, our strengths, and our imagination to drive down the PEIA costs, help our retirees, and help our people be better and be healthier. We are the consumers. We are one of the largest groups of consumers in West Virginia, so let's do this. Let's make happy customers and healthy customers. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Zanetta from Welch.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Zanetta Stallworth. I'm from McDowell County, and I'm here on the behalf of everybody, 55 strong, teachers, especially service personnel, because I was a former service personnel. I stand before you today to just ask for one thing and one thing only, to make sure that you guys are listening. Just not hearing, but listening. You guys owe it to these people. You owe it to the people who have came here meeting after meeting, year after year, standing before you and addressing you to ask that you seek a solution. We were taught that you go to school, you get educated, you find a job, one or the other. But what we were not taught was to beg. And we are a little tired of begging. I don't know about y'all, but we're a little tired of begging. See, these are things that I, as an organizer, when I go from school to school, place to place, and I speak to people, and the first thing they ask is what is going on with PEIA. I'm a mother. I used to be a single parent. I'm still single now. Let me go back there. But that's a long story. That's another hearing we got to talk about. No, no, really. I had to keep some humor here because we're tired. I am. But basically what I'm saying is we constantly stand before our legislators and beg. We stood in February in the rain. We stood on that hard marble floor. We lost our voices, some of us. Your cheerleader right here did. And we asked for just the simplest thing. First of all, we asked for respect because you guys don't. Some of you don't. And that's sad. Because it used to be a pride thing to be a teacher. It used to be a pride thing to be a worker. But now it seems like you're being penalized for trying to make a living for your family. You're being penalized just coming to show up. The sacrifices that people made early in the morning, during the day, throughout the day, just to get on the highway to make a decent living for their family. You have people up here who are crying, who are sharing their stories with you. And I know that's not easy to open up themselves for their private moments. We had a lady that just stood here and cried and admitted that she couldn't afford a prescription. Do you not know how bad that hurt? Do you not know how bad people are feeling now and how bad it makes me feel? When I go and I hear people say, I can't afford to go to work. I can't afford to go to work. That is what we have done, and we are constantly doing with the increases of PEIA. We constantly are doing it. You guys say you don't have a solution, but I'm quite sure if you really sit down and listen to all the suggestions. See, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about everybody in here. You have to go to sleep at night. I don't have to stand up here and tell you what a bad person you are, because just look in the mirror every time you go there. And I'm not calling any names. You know who you are. Because it took us 9 days when you were able to do something in 1, or was it 2? Regardless of what it wasn't fair, and it was downright disrespectful. It was disrespectful. But yet and still, these people are in it not because of the money, because they love what they do. They take pride in what they do. And yet and still, the only thing they are asking for is a decent health care that they can be proud of and be able to take the required care that they need so they can perform their duties in the classroom. If you don't do anything today, again, you have to look at yourself in the mirror if you have one. If you don't, at one point, you have to close your eyes. And my prayer is that every time you close your eyes, that you will have no peace until you really listen and really try to turn this thing around, because you're able to if you just listen with your heart, not with your own agenda. We are tired of being raped by the corporations that are coming in here, stealing our resources and not being taxed. But if somebody else is getting taxed, your palms are getting greased real good. And we are tired of that. I'm not intimidated. And no, I'm not an angry black woman. I'm just a woman that's fed up and fired up. Because when I have to go and I have to talk to people and try to empower people and try to restore the belief that their voice does matter, and I'm sitting there, oh, your voice matters, you make a difference. And then they stand up in here and they go to meeting after meeting and they talk and they pour their hearts out. No one listens. Well, it's time for you guys to listen, not with your ear, but with your heart and with common sense. Because some things are just common sense. Now, I'm not here to preach to you because, again, I'm just being Zanetta. I'm not here to tickle your feet or tickle your fancy. And my boss is right over there, Christine Campbell, and right about now. She'll get me later, but not now. But anyway, what I am here to do is to restore the faith in people. You guys have the opportunity to turn this thing around. You guys have the opportunity to come out with a little bit of human in your heart, which some of you probably don't. But anyway, you guys have a chance to turn that thing around. And I'm asking that you guys search real deep down inside and put your agenda aside and put what's best for these people that's standing behind me, what's left here, okay? And I'm just asking as a mother, as a grandmother, these educators, service personnel, teachers, all of the above, they are my grandchildren's future. I want my grandchildren to stay here in West Virginia with me. And I want the best for my grandchildren. And the only way we can do that, if we make teaching, make education more attractive, more beneficial, where people will want to be teachers, not say, I don't want to be that. Why would I want to be a teacher? They're disrespected, they're underpaid, they have no good insurance. Okay? So what I am saying to you guys, take a long look in that mirror. And every time you close your eyes And I know you, Mr. Carmichael, I know you're hearing 55 strong, and I hope that you continue to hear 55 strong until you get it right. And for the rest of you, I understand it's the law, but laws can also be made to be broken, and they can also be made that are going to be effective and good for everyone across the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Betty Ravar, followed by Rob Ofsta.
So I've been going to hearings for a long time, and this is probably the best one I've ever been to. I'm Betty Rivard, and I'm a retired state employee, and now I'm a full-time volunteer advocate with the legislature. I have a few comments. Some of them reflect things that people have already said, but I have them in kind of a consistent format. I try not to be too long, and then a few things that I'd like to respond to that I heard tonight. And I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I've been a PEI recipient since 1973. Throughout my career with DHHR, I always made thousands of dollars less than the national standard for an MSW social worker. I accepted the trade-off of having good benefits. And I have to say that PEIA has been great for me and for my family when they qualified. And I still qualify. I retired at age 55 with 25 years of service. I didn't realize until then how much our lower pay scale would cause me to have a lower pension and Social Security. I kind of came up at an age when I just didn't think ahead. I was a planner for other people, but not for myself. So I retired in 1999, and I had to work to supplement my income and until this year. And now, at age 73, I'm on a mostly fixed income. I'm a poll worker. I get a few $100s during election year. A photographer, sometimes I make a little bit of money. I need certainty about what insurance and health care are going to cost me. I have 5 specific requests. 1, change the 80-20 formula so that the state funds insurance at 100%. And if I understand it correctly, the way it is now, the legislature can't do certain things because of that formula, and I'm not an expert on that, but it seems like it's a barrier, and I've heard discussion about the need to change the formula. I agree with restoring cuts in the corporate net income tax, mainly because it didn't produce the benefits that were promised. And I think that corporations need to pay their fair share in our state. I also agree with raising the natural gas severance tax to at least 7.5% and even as high as 10% if possible. There's no evidence that this will discourage production, and it is basically an exportable tax. I request that we lower costs by following the example that Vermont is trying to do and buy drugs from Canada or other less expensive sources. I also want to reflect what Nydia said and request that we pay for more wellness activities and that we be rewarded and not penalized for achieving individual goals. We need to stop giving away the store to outside corporations, stop trying to shift more taxes to the middle class, and consider raising taxes on the top-earning West Virginians. Right now, and I was really shocked, one of the things I follow at the legislature is fiscal issues, so I've been in a whole lot of finance committee meetings. And I discovered, I guess last year when we were in the middle of a budget fight, that right now I pay 9% to taxes, including all payroll taxes, where a wealthy person pays only 6.5%. So my question that I asked at the hearings last year, and I'll ask again, is why should I trust them to use their extra $2.50 on the dollar to help the rest of us? Trickle down has been proven wrong over and over. We need to put our state first and protect our people and our needs. This isn't working. I emailed myself my notes, and there's a piece missing. And I don't know where it went. So let me just go over a few other things that I wanted to respond to that Chief Hall said. One of the things you said is that this is a cost. And I really think we need to reframe that. This is an investment. It's an investment in people who are investing their lives in public service. Healthcare is the biggest employer in our state. And the health of our employees and families is also extremely important to every single thing that we do. The legislature always finds money for things they want. In the depth of the deficit fight last year, I witnessed, and some of you might have witnessed, lobbyists for coal and gas came into committee meetings asking for more money. And the response was, how can we help you? I was shocked. Even after 25 years, I had never seen it like right there in front of my face. And just finally, I want to say that our first priority, and other people have said this too, needs to be investing in our state and ourselves, and that includes PEIA. And I wish you all well in putting this puzzle together. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Ofsta. I'm sorry? No. No, I've got Jerry Chilinsky after you.
Okay.
And more.
And more. My name is Robbie Ofsa. I'm from Mercer County, and first I'd like to say how fortunate Kanawha County is to have such a large panel, because I went to the PEIA task force down in Mercer, and Dale was there, and the superintendent from McDowell County Schools, and that was it. So we didn't, I know that we'll, you know, those people will be heard by everybody, but it's fortunate that here you all get to see so much of the task force. First of all, I wanted to say something about the provider discount that the PEIA gets. I had a hernia surgery, and PEIA paid so much less than 80% of the cost of that surgery because of that provider discount. And I think it's kind of unfair that when the total bill came from the hospital, it was $3,000, and my portion was $1,300 because of the provider discount. So the 80% that supposedly PEIA was paying, that doesn't work out to 80%. And so I thought, you know, maybe if they changed it so that the provider discount and then we paid 20% after the provider discount, that would really help us out. I wanted also to mention something about a job with benefits. When I'm retired, and when I was a child, a young man, my mother always said when I would go in, I got a job as a busboy, and she said, do you have benefits? And I said, well, I can eat in the kitchen maybe. And then as I got older and I went to college, she said, well, I want you to consider a career where you're going to have benefits. She was an educator. My father is an educator. He is probably the longest teaching person in West Virginia. He is currently in his 60th year at Concord College, Dr. William Ofsa. I'm sure somebody here had him. back to the point, I know that you all have benefits. I'm certain that you have benefits. As a retiree with PEIA, I feel like I don't have benefits anymore. I had my hernia surgery in the spring. The doctor said, well, go ahead and have it in the spring so you can do a lot of things this summer. I said, great. And I got my portion of the bill, and I paid what I could, and I set part of it up on payments. So, but then the part where I don't have benefits is on the 1st of June when I was spider bitten. And I considered, well, I'm just not going to go to the doctor for this spider bite because I'm already paying off something. And when I retired, I figured out all of what I would end up paying. I never imagined that PEIA would be so detrimental to my income at the time. So I have luckily, I believe that it was probably a brown recluse because it was terrible, and it was about this big, and it's still the same size, but it's better. And like the nurse that I spoke with, she said, well, if it doesn't turn black, you can keep your leg. But I felt like that was because of PEIA. I risked my health. My wife wasn't around. She never would have allowed me to do that. But nevertheless, I went without that benefit. And then the last thing I want to say, this benefit, no, this is not the last thing, this is next to last. This benefit is something that we worked for. I was in the 90s strike. And then about 7 years ago, I went up to Tamarack, and they said, here is the $60 million that has to come from the employees for PEIA. And I said, that's despicable, that it would have to come from the employees. And that's when they started raising our premiums and deductibles. And then I went back the next year. Here is the $60 million that has to come from employees. And so these are the things that I was told up there, that instead of the state providing this benefit that they provided for us instead of a pay raise, this benefit has been taken away. And as we are looking at a teacher shortage, and as the legislature is up there considering teachers that don't even have degrees, considering those people to be teachers, because we can't attract real teachers, because we won't pay them, and the benefits are poor. The benefit of our health insurance currently is very poor. But then here's the thing that really made me drive up here from Mercer County. When I read something that was said in the Gazette, and it said, in most of these hearings, I find that most people just want something for free. I believe that that was said to incite the feelings of the public against the teachers, because these teachers don't want anything for free. If you want to see someone who is getting something for free, look at our legislature, because you are getting dedicated employees far under the cost of what they deserve. When you talk about getting something for free, you're taking. That's very unfair. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jerry, followed by Fred Albert.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Chilinsky. I'm the president of the Boone County Education Association, affiliate of WVEA. I wasn't sure I was really going to speak tonight. I talked to my wife about it, and she said, why don't you just go and listen for once? I've been doing this for about 20-some years. Well, I didn't take her advice, so I'm here. And the lightning will strike me as I go home. Listening to the people here, and I'm going to be very brief because most of what I'm going to say has been said. I'm just going to reiterate it. There seems to be two problems. One is a consistent funding source for PEIA. And every time I come and listen to the legislature and they try to address it, they come up with seems to be the same solutions. Raise the tax on alcohol, raise the tax on tobacco, maybe DMV taxes, and find some type of corporate welfare to attract business to our state. Now, I have no problem with the alcohol and the tobacco. They may slow down some preventable disease, which I have no problem with. That's going to save costs in the end. However, I do have a problem with providing corporate welfare to out-of-state companies who promise to deliver jobs and promise to do things for our state and don't deliver. If I sign a contract for something, I'm expected to do something. If I don't deliver, there's a penalty. There doesn't seem to be any penalty for them. So, that's not solving this problem. We need to find a dedicated source of income to provide for PEIA. The other thing I wanted to mention is ourselves. And by that I mean the people that have PEIA. I'm going to talk to you directly instead of there. We have the power. Oh, okay. Thought my speech therapist voice would work, but I guess not. We have the power as PEIA holders. We elect the people that are in charge of providing a solution. If they're not doing the job, then we have to exercise our right to replace them and get people in who have the imagination to do the job. The other thing, and I get in trouble with my members when I say this, is we have to take control of our lives. I mean, I may not look like the epitome of health, but a few years ago I decided I'm not going to wait anymore. I've lost about 35 pounds. Granted, I do have some more to lose, but I'm tired of waiting on Big Pharma to come up with a new powder or pill or potion to cure a preventable thing, my overeating. So we need to take back. We need to become in control and exercise that control. Now, I had said before that we had talked about raising the tax on alcohol and tobacco, things that contribute to preventable disease. There are other things too. They started to address the soda tax. Well, there's already on that, but WVU kind of controls the purse strings on that, and I don't think they're really going to want to share that much. But there are other things we can do that are injurious to our health, and we need to look at taxing them and making them pay up too, and paying up for their responsibility in it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've taken up enough of your time. Unlike some of the counties, Boone County is still in session, and 5 o'clock gets here earlier and earlier. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Our next speaker is Fred Albert, followed by Lawrence Webb.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Albert. I'm the local president of AFT Kanawha. I'm the state treasurer of AFT West Virginia, and I am most proudly a 6th grade math teacher at DuPont Middle School in Kanawha County. I can't think of anything that I could say that probably has not already been said tonight, but I just want to make you aware that what we started in February of this year, we're not finished. We have started something in the labor movement that has swept this country, and I think we have proven that our voice does matter and our actions do matter. None of us really desired to walk out of our classrooms, and we certainly did not do anything to harm children in any way, shape, or form. We did it for the future of our children in this state. We can no longer be silent to what has happened to us as educators. We feel that we have been devalued, and we're not going to take that anymore, and I think that's quite evident. But it's not our job as educators. It's not our job as service personnel to find a solution to PEIA. That is upon the legislators. That's their job. And this is the note that you can take to them from me. We expect our legislative body to find the funding source and to secure PEIA for a long, long time. That's what we expect. That's what we're looking for. And nothing less is going to make us happy. And we're just not going to settle for anything less. So please take them that message. That's their job. I appreciate all of the suggestions that have been made here tonight by some really smart teachers and other people, public employees, but that's not our job. Our job is to teach our future, to provide buildings that they feel comfortable being educated in, to drive school buses, to cook their lunches and their breakfast, and so on and so forth. But the job of our legislative body is to make sure that we have a health care program that is sufficient. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lawrence Webb, followed by Mary Ann Clater.
Good evening, and I want to thank you for allowing me to speak, members of this board. And I'm from Mercer County. I am a custodian. I don't apologize for being one. And I've enjoyed working with people over the years. I hope one day to be a teacher, if it's the Lord's will. But my concern with this is one thing about medical. I recently got some medicine, and I got a note from the board office about there would be no changes rates. We would have we have our money taken out for several weeks with a change in the school year. And as I understand, it runs from July 1st to June 30th, and then there'd be possible changes increase in the coming year. But I went recently, a few weeks ago, I have to take a cholesterol medicine. I was never sent anything in the mail or any call from board, nothing notifying me of any increase in my medicine. I was paying around $2 or something like that, $3, and it went up to $6 something, almost $7. I asked the lady if I didn't have insurance, what it would cost me. I'm thinking it was somewhere around $65 or almost $70 if I didn't have the insurance I have. And that was for a 90-day supply of medicine. And you can figure what that is if I was to opt to take a 30-day or 60 or 90. You'd have to make a budget. I don't just speak for myself. I'm single. I've never been married. But I have a heart whether you're single or whether you're married and you have kids. This affects all of us. And this affects all party lines, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I say this not just as an employee, but I say this as a citizen. I pray that God give each of you wisdom to do what you need to do. We need His help too in this. And I do pray that you make the right choices. But this affects everybody, whether you're poor, middle class, or whatever, whether you have a degree or not, or wherever your tier is. I don't know much about the tiers. That's something new to me. But I make as a proposal, I'd like to say, too, for providers, that we provide a list. I used to have a policy at a company I used to work with years ago with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you were given a book similar to a phone book, and it had in-state providers for like whatever service you needed, if it was in your program. And if you need to go out of state, you had a list of providers, you had a number to call. But here, as I understand it, that if you need to go out of state, you have to call a toll-free number. If you're out of state, if you need to call for something, it's basically like keeping you in state. It's almost like if you have a vacation, it's almost like you can't really plan and have a life. I just want to put the scenario, say, for example, you're out of state, or you go on a trip overseas or go somewhere and travel, you have a sickness, or you're married and you have a wife and kids, and something life-threatening happens and you need to go to a doctor. Are you saying that I have to come back to my state, to my doctor? It shouldn't be like this. You should be able to go to any place you want as long as you have, and you should be able to have a number to contact. You should have something like that. I also think that the paperwork for annual screening is a discriminatory thing. And I think that should be eliminated. weight, body, cholesterol, diabetes, whatever. Sometimes people can't help themselves. Not everybody has good genetics. And to me, that's a form of discrimination. That and to anybody. There should not be, this is uncalled for, in my opinion. It should never have been allowed to be passed, and I think should be eliminated, period. I think there should be a cap on what you pay for medical and prescriptions, and I say that there shouldn't be this. Whatever your medicine is, whatever your disease is, or whatever you have, you can't help some things sometimes. I think on what the doctor you see, I think there should be a cap on what he's paid for services, whether you see him for a visit or for a procedure that you have to do. I also think that there should be some way, I saw this on C-SPAN a few years ago. I don't remember seeing this on the major networks. I'm not saying that it wasn't shown, but I think when it comes to prescriptions, that we should get with other states and see what we can do to pool resources in some way to see what we can do to lower the cost for prescriptions. And if that works, so be it. If not, I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while. I don't know what the pros and cons are, but if it works, I think it should be a feasible idea. And I'd like to make a comment on the exercise programs. I think that you should have exercise programs too after school. Have like an incentive, have like a county diet counselor or some from public health office, somebody give counseling to teachers and like custodians, and have an exercise program after school that you can use the gym and have like aerobics, running, like baseball, certain things like that. But I want to say about the gym. Now I went to one close to home, and there's some things I don't agree on. That you have the money, that you participate in a club, and you have like a payroll deduction come out. I don't agree with all that, because if I have to pay a bill on something or do something, if I have an unnecessary expense come up, I just think it's unnecessary. And they won't. And if you go to some of the clubs, they say, well, we'll have you give us money, you make a down payment or deposit to us, and then we'll have like direct deposit come out of your account. And there's some things I don't agree on that. I think it should be a pay system. You come into the club, you pay them directly, or something, or like set up a monthly payment plan. But I don't think you should be discriminated in weight or physical fitness. I think everybody should do what they can to stay in shape and their diet and everything. But I believe we work. I believe we should take care of that. Sometimes you need medicine. There's some people who can't. There's sometimes people have certain health problems that they can't maintain their weight or have a hard time doing certain exercises. And sometimes as you get older, things happen. But I just want to say that's all I have at this time. And I want to thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Marianne Clater, followed by Corinna Rouse.
I'm probably one of the unique people here that isn't a teacher or a part of the public education system. And I'm also not even a public employee, but my PEIA has probably been a curse and a blessing to me. I was an auditor for 22 years, and I probably might look like I'm old enough to retire, but I wasn't old enough to retire. And I was sitting down at UVA, and that was the first time they had to put my son on life support. And I had to make a decision because we were just bouncing back and forth, having to go back and forth to University of Virginia when they were trying to figure out what was wrong with him that had paralyzed him. And I'm usually a person that kind of checks on things a little better, and I didn't realize until about a year ago, because it's been 4 years when I quit my job. I didn't realize that my 22 years of service is like somebody just took it and treated me like dirty dishwater and just took those years of service and just threw them out the door. Because when I called to find out, about my benefits, if I was like, I've only got 6 years left. So how's that going to affect me? And they were like, oh, you'll be fine. Just leave your money in. When you get 55, you can decide to retire. You won't get, there'll be like a reduced in benefits or something. And then if you wait till, I think it was 62 or something, then it'll be just like you never even left. Well, I was going to PEIA meeting for something about my son, and they tend to like to assign a person to me because I guess maybe I cause too much trouble when I go. And so they were like, the guy who happened to be talking to me when I told him that he left and all that, and he said, well, you're not going to get any insurance when you leave. And I was like, I'm not going to get any insurance because I left. And I decided that instead of separating from my husband and going and taking my son and living somewhere else, in another house or whatever, and we could have got benefits probably on welfare or whatever, but I decided to make money so that nobody would be taking care of me, so I'm not going to have any insurance. So that, that's what I'm saying. That's like what's been evil to me, is that I don't understand how 22 years of service that I left so that my son would not be put into an institution, because I believe that I was the person that needed to take care of him. And I can't believe that such a detrimental experience that I went through to find out later that I'm not going to have any insurance. And what I was told at PIA was that, well, so I am on my husband's insurance. He's in local governments. And I was told, well, don't get divorced. So, if my husband decides to start beating me or something, I'm just going to have to stay with him because I'm going to need my insurance. And if he happens to die, then I said, well, what if my husband dies? And he said, well, just don't get married again. Well, you all might not realize, well, I think a lot of people in this room know that I'm a preacher, and I don't believe in that anymore. It was a time in my life that I did believe in that, but I don't believe in that anymore. So it's like a moral issue to me now that people have insurance. And when it comes to my son, we are fortunate because he would not be alive now. He is now on a vent. He has lost his speech. His body is paralyzed all the way down. His eyes recently were affected, and that was the way he was communicating with us. And there are services that PIA would save money on. And that's why I was so upset, really, with the composition of the task force. Because if you ever were to speak to people who are taking care of people at home, we feel like our children are a burden to society and to the system. So we try to find ways that the cost wouldn't be incurred. For the first 2 years of his illness, where we were going into the hospital at UVA, he did not have a bed sore. People were amazed when we would bring him. They say, I can't believe he doesn't have any bed sores. Y'all are doing a wonderful job. Well, when he started going back and forth in the hospital here in West Virginia, we come out. He had so many holes in his body by the time he came out. And no, I didn't sue the hospital. You know why I didn't sue the hospital? I don't want anybody to be afraid to touch my child. That is the reason that I did not sue the hospital, and I haven't sued them before. Because I want somebody to take care of my child. I want them to treat my child. So I try to do everything I can to make sure that services can be done in the home. So, I have racked the doctor's brain on making her to order x-rays at home. I make her do blood work at home because every time he has to go in the ambulance and he has to go out and get his care. And the last time they forced us to go out the house, they were like, you have to go to the emergency room. I said, I don't think he's really that sick, because he's sick, but he's not sick to where, we have a hospital almost in our house. And I said, I don't think he's that sick. So we go to emergency room. Well, the emergency room we normally go to, they were full. So we get an ambulance ride to Tays Valley. Tays Valley can't in no kind of way keep him if they want to keep him. So against my will, she was like, well, I can't write a prescription. I was like, if you could write something and I could just take him home because I don't think the numbers are as bad as you are looking at. Well, then they send us in another ambulance to Memorial. When you get to Memorial, they keep us. And the doctor the next morning says, he didn't need to stay. I said, I knew that, but I can't convince anybody. So now you got 3 ambulance visits because the ambulance to the emergency room, to the next place, to the hospital, then back home. An emergency room visit. Then you pay for a hospital visit that wasn't necessary. So if we could beef up in some kind of way, incentivize the doctors, at-home doctors, and procedures that can be done. People like me, we take very good care of our loved ones. And the money I'm paying now for the home health to come in has to do with the wounds, but I mean, I take care of them too, but I don't know if they're going south or anything. So they're there to kind of be our eyes. So if we would just think about things like that. And when they were talking about the pre-authorization, like he's on a vent and his suction machine went out one time. I had to stay on the phone all day to make sure that the pre-authorizations got in because the doctor had to send in something, and then we're waiting on the next person. And I put my child at risk that day because all he had to do was something could have got clogged that needed to be suctioned out, and I had no way of getting it suctioned out. Since that time, I told PIA, I bought an extra suction out of my own money, $300 on Amazon for me to buy a suction machine. So I know darn well it didn't cost you that much money to buy. But I could have sent him to the emergency room because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. So it's little things like that that's costing more money. So, and I've been to the hearings, and I've told these stories. I've told them what I've went through. I've told them that and I'm not a big tax person. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. Y'all might think I'm a big tax person, but I am not. I don't believe in taxing our citizens. But I believe the people who are coming here to work from out of state, why don't you put a user fee on those out-of-state workers? Because I don't believe West Virginians need to pay more. I came from coal country. That's where I grew up. And they screwed us. You want to know when we got clean water, or what we called city water, to come in Estelle in Cabin Creek, West Virginia? I was grown, and I had left home, and I was married. So even when coal was booming, West Virginia was not taking care of its people. West Virginia wasn't taking care of its roads. And yeah, I know it was the Democrats that was in control. That's why you got to look at the individual and not the party. And I met Mitch Carmichael in 2016, and I know that, there's a lot of people want to say ditch Mitch and everything, but you do have the power to turn a lot of this around because of the position that you hold. So, and that's why I'm hoping that you are listening. I'm hoping that, because you're not up for election yet, so you got time to turn this around. The others, they're not, they've kind of gotten it from the teachers. And if public employees could strike, this would have been fixed by now. So you're fortunate that they can't strike because you wouldn't even be able to put a bill through because who was going to come in and do all the services? Yeah. So I just say, stop treating our employees like dirty dishwater and we're just throwing them out. And there's many of us that are depending on these services for our children. Like we hardly ever go to the doctor because I got rid of all of mine but one specialist when they raised the co-pays on specialists. And that was for my glaucoma because I said I can't work if I don't have my eyes. But everything else I've let go. So I just asked you, have some compassion. Because the Bible says when the righteous are in charge, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in charge, the people mourn. And right now we're hearing a lot of mourning. But I think you can turn it around.
Corinna Rouse, followed by Gary Zuckett.
I've been here many times before. My name is Karina Rouse. I'm the president of AFT Boone County, Local 6101, from the southern part of the state. I work in Boone. I grew up in Logan County. I live in Kanawha County in St. Albans. I've seen the hurt across the entire state. And I don't have a lot of notes. I have a short list. I want to thank you all for being on that task force that you are on. I realize not everyone is here, but most of you are. I want you to know that you're being held accountable for the decisions that you make that hurt or help West Virginians. If any of you in your heart or in your pocketbook or in your campaigns have accepted out-of-state money for office, shame on you. Shame on whoever you are and you know, because God knows. When you close your eyes at night, He knows who you are. He brought you into this world. He can take us all out like that. Won't take long. There are all kinds of things that I can say that everyone else has said tonight. You've been schooled. You've been taken to school. I want to take you to church. It's time that we step up. We are West Virginians. We did not climb into a pit in hell. We proudly say, almost heaven. You're going to carry shame, you're going to carry glory out of this mess. I'd like to think that we carry ourselves to heaven with God. You've heard some awful stories here. It is really hard to listen. Those are my friends that you heard. They're family to me. My son Charlie was here a little bit ago, and he took my husband out of this room. My husband had a stroke a few days ago, on Thursday. He knows who we all are. If he's met you, he knows you. But he doesn't know who the president is. He's guessed everyone from Eisenhower to Obama. He's not made it to Trump. He's somewhere between 2002 and 2012. He drove me to work Thursday. He left and he went back to the Air Guard base where he had worked 38 and a half years. And it took them a while to realize my husband was not in his right mind. He came with me tonight because he knows me, he knows you, he knows AFT. He knows most of the people in the legislature. He was up there at the strike every day with us. I don't call it a work stoppage. I call it a strike. I had my sign out there. Anybody could have arrested me at any point. Morrissey or whoever else wanted to walk in and escort me out, I would have gone, yes, I get to go to jail for a cause I believe in. I believe in West Virginians. I believe in them more than I believe in anything. I grew up poor. I grew up really poor. I grew up with outhouses. I grew up with coal stoves. I grew up helping to raise every bite of food we ate. I grew up in the southern part of West Virginia that we don't like to have people know about. I grew up in the part where JFK came. I grew up in the part where Lyndon Baines Johnson wanted us to have a great society and move out of a cesspit in the armpit of the world. They believed in West Virginians. They believed in us. You all have got to believe in us. You've got to step up. Senator Carmichael, I do not want to stand outside the Senate chamber doors and go, move Mitch one more time. I don't think you want that nightmare in your life. But West Virginians know how to go West Virginia on people. The rest of the country knows that. Why should we have to teach it again? You're not stupid people. No one sitting up here is. My son reminded me, and I got off track for a minute, I apologize, that Pennsylvania's governor worked with a Republican legislature to take care of their school system, to turn it around. We can do this, but it's more than just teachers. You've been told about the retirees. You've been told about the teachers, the public employees. They've all come to you. And I don't think I term all of that begging. I call it admonishment. You've been told what needs to be done. What I can't understand is why you're not. You know about cost containment? You know about hospitals that are about money first? You know about people who are willing to reach into your heart and soul, and in case you don't know what that looks like, here you go. And they will squeeze the blood out of us if you allow that. I can't believe in the worst nightmare, in the worst demon crawling out of hell, that you all would want that. Any of you. Good, bad, or ugly. Wherever you live, in church or out of church, heathen or Christian or heavenly driven, I don't know. But you've got to deal with it. You've got to step up. You don't have 50 lifetimes to get this right because you've got some babies that are going to die. You've got a mother that just left here who's praying that God lets her have that precious life a little bit longer, because to her, He is everything. He should be everything to you. You shouldn't need those pictures. You've heard the words of the people of this state. I can't believe that your hearts are so hard that you can walk out of here and not immediately tomorrow say, we're going to fix this. And not wait until October where you may force us to do something more drastic. Why do we have to go there? Why must we go West Virginia on you? And I apologize, but I want to take a minute. I'm going to pray for you. You can throw me out the door afterward. Heavenly Father, thank you for another day. Forgive me if I have offended anyone at all tonight. I ask that you reach into the hearts and the minds of all parties that are involved with this PEI mess that we have. Make us see the light and the way. And Lord, touch every person involved in this room and in this mess. To your glory, O God, I lift up your name. And as always, amen.
Gary Zuckett. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to say close? Okay. We again want to thank you all for coming and travel safely home.